Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Michael Haight. Michael Haight was born on January 7, 1980, in Seattle, Washington. As a child, his family moved to Cedar City, Utah. As a child, Michael enjoyed regular kid activities like baseball, basketball, and soccer. He was also an Eagle Scout and did well in school. After graduating from high school in 1998, Michael spent a summer working at a fish plant in Alaska. He quickly rose to the position of line manager, supervising over a dozen people. His work ethic and dedication were recognized, leading to his promotion. A hardworking member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Michael went on a mission trip to southern Brazil. This experience strengthened his faith and commitment to his community. After returning to the United States, Michael attended Southern Utah University, graduating with a business degree in 2004. While at the university, Michael met his future wife, Tasha Earle. They fell in love and were married at St. George's Temple on May 10, 2003. Michael seemed to be the epitome of a hardworking husband and father. He coached his children's sports teams, attended school concerts, and spent time with them skiing and doing projects in the garage. However, on January 4, 2023, a shocking discovery exposed the dark reality of Michael's family life. That day, police found 8 bodies in Michael's home, leaving police and neighbors stunned and baffled. The alarm was raised when Tasha Haight missed an online appointment and her husband Michael did not show up for work, prompting worried co-workers to call the police and request a welfare check at the family's home. Officers went to Michael's Enoch home, but no one answered when they knocked. Upon further inspection, the home appeared to be empty. Since Michael's family had 5 children, officers contacted the Iron County School District to check if any children were at school. They discovered that no children were there. When officers arrived at Michael's home, the Michaels lived in a 1-story home with a basement. Detectives arrived shortly after the home was designated a crime scene. Upon entering the master bedroom, they found 4-year-old Gavin lying face down, his head turned to the left. One of his arms was propped up under his head on a pillow, and a blanket partially covered his body. Tasha was similarly covered, with only part of her body under the blanket. On the other side of the bed, police found an older woman, later identified as Gail Earle, Tasha's mother. Gail was lying on her back with her head on a pillow, and was also partially covered with a blanket, as were her daughter and grandson. When police searched Michael's home, they came across Bryn's room. Inside, they found the 12-year-old girl lying on the bed, slightly elevated and partially covered with a blanket. When they entered Amon's room, police found a 7-year-old boy lying face down in the corner. Notably, unlike his siblings, he had no pillow or blanket. Sienna, Amon's twin sister, was found in her bedroom, lying on her left side on the bed with her head on a pillow, covered with a blanket. Michael's oldest child, Macy, 17, was also found on the bed, her head on a pillow and her body covered with a blanket. Police later located Michael in the basement gym, where he was lying on a sleeping bag. Each of the 8 victims suffered fatal gunshot wounds. It didn't take long for police to identify Michael Haight as the prime suspect. They believe he killed his wife, mother-in-law, and 5 children before taking his own life. As the investigation began, a neighbor shared important information that helped police create a timeline of events. The neighbor reported that she woke up at 3:30 a.m. to use the bathroom and heard a loud bang that sounded like fireworks. However, she knew that the day fireworks were allowed in the neighborhood had passed, which made her feel uneasy. The neighbor went on to say that after the first bang, she heard 2 more bangs in quick succession. This noise was followed by a short pause, then several more bangs. Police suspect that the loud noises the neighbor heard around 3:30 a.m. were related to the brutal murder that occurred that night, which they believe was committed by Michael. During the investigation, police learned that a non-family member had reported the abuse to the Department of Child Services in 2020. The person spoke with Macy, then 14, and she shared her fears about her father, leading to a further investigation into the Michael family. After receiving the report, child welfare and child protection agencies interviewed Macy and her parents separately. During Macy's interview, she shared alarming details. She mentioned instances where her father choked her, leaving her in fear for her life. Macy revealed that these violent incidents began in 2017. One incident involved her father grabbing her by the shoulders and pushing her against a piece of wooden furniture. When police spoke with Macy's father, Michael, he denied harming his daughter. He downplayed the seriousness of the incidents Macy described, calling them a misunderstanding. Michael attributed his emotional state to the death of his father and his brother's recent divorce. Michael admitted to taking his frustrations out on his eldest daughter. However, his wife, Tasha, chose not to file a criminal complaint against him. After an investigation, Child Protective Services, the Enoch Police Department, and the Iron County District Attorney's Office also decided not to prosecute because the case did not meet the criteria for prosecution. Additionally, a fatality assessment was conducted with Tasha, and according to her response, it did not indicate that her relationship with Michael was fatal. However, victim support services were provided to Tasha and the children in the months after the case was opened. Through conversations with Tasha's friends, the police developed a different view of Michael than the one he presented to the public. When visiting Tasha, her friends would often leave the kitchen faucet on to hide their conversations because Tasha suspected Michael was eavesdropping. To avoid giving Michael a reason to yell at Tasha, her friends would also help her with housework. Whenever they texted Tasha, she would reply with short, positive messages, possibly knowing that Michael might be reading them. This behavior suggested that Tasha was trying to maintain a positive appearance in front of Michael, implying that their marriage was not in trouble. Police investigating the case discovered that Michael displayed a high level of control over his wife, Tasha. He exercised this control in a variety of ways, including confiscating her car keys and phone to restrict her freedom. Additionally, Michael's reaction when Tasha purchased a $30 rug from Walmart to replace her dirty carpet raised further suspicions about his behavior. Tasha needed to buy a rug, but her husband, Michael, was angry and said it was a waste of money. Tasha talked to her friends about how her 7-year-old son, Amon, had begun to act like his father, imitating his father's bad behavior. When Tasha asked Amon to do something, he would say, "That's not my job," which worried Tasha because it showed that Amon was not taking responsibility and was not listening to her. This is similar to how Michael often ignores or dismisses Tasha's requests, and it seems that Amon is adopting similar habits. In 2022, Tasha made the rare decision to get a manicure as an act of self-care. However, her husband, Michael, objected and tried to limit her freedom. Despite this, Tasha still felt younger and more confident after getting her nails done. She decided to make this a monthly habit, but Michael strongly objected because of cost concerns. Tasha explained that it would only cost $25 a month, but Michael was still unconvinced. He argued that spending money on her nails would take away from the needs of her children, demonstrating a controlling attitude and a strong sense of financial responsibility. At the same time, Tasha began taking better care of herself and losing weight. This came after years of her husband, Michael, calling her fat and ugly. However, instead of being supportive, Michael becomes angry when she loses weight. He accuses her of being unfaithful, trying to explain away her change in appearance. Michael's controlling behavior escalates as he tries to order Tasha to stop losing weight. He begs her to stop because he fears that other men will find her attractive. This demand stems from his own deep insecurities and his need to control his wife's body and actions. Tasha's friends report an incident involving the family's kitchen table to the police. The table is broken and Tasha needs to replace it. However, her husband, Michael, refuses to provide the necessary funds. Frustrated by the situation, Tasha decides to take matters into her own hands. She decides to refurbish the old table, hoping to improve its appearance and functionality. Michael is unhappy with this decision because Tasha did not ask for his permission. This is not the first time this has happened. During the holiday season, Michael was very frugal with the family finances. Despite earning a substantial income from his job at Haight, he only gave $100 to each child for Christmas gifts. Tasha always wanted to give her children a full Christmas, but Michael's reluctance to add money made this difficult. He believed his income was legitimate and did not feel the need to provide more for the family. Michael's intense focus on reducing waste and conserving resources leads him to impose strict household rules on Tasha. She is required to wash and reuse plastic bags, no matter how many times they have been used. This adds to Tasha's responsibilities, leaving her feeling overwhelmed. Additionally, Michael's need for control also affects Tasha's hygiene and childcare habits. Michael requires Tasha to use wipes and, claiming that it is better for the environment and will save money. However, this makes Tasha feel uncomfortable and stressed. If she does not follow Michael's instructions, he will punish her severely. He makes it clear that disobedience will lead to a lot of trouble for her. This threat creates a sense of fear and submission in Tasha, leaving her with no choice but to comply with Michael's demands. According to Tasha's friends, she shared with them that Michael's abuse was initially directed at her during their marriage. However, in the late 2010s, Michael began abusing their children as well. Macy suffered greatly as the abuse escalated. Michael put a lot of pressure on Macy to get straight A's. The burden of these unrealistic expectations became too much for Macy to bear. Macy's friends reported another disturbing incident to the police. One evening, Michael came home to find Macy sitting with her head in her mother's lap. He became angry and told Macy to get up and clean her room. This left Macy deeply disturbed, as she recalled looking into her father's eyes and seeing hatred and evil. Police also discovered an incident involving 7-year-old Briley, who was playing with a changing table and would not stop when Michael told her to stop. This led Michael to blame his wife, Tasha, for their children's behavior, calling them the worst kids in the world, disrespectful and horrible. Furthermore, Michael would insult Tasha, calling her fat and ugly, all in front of their 5 children. Tasha decided to end her 20-year marriage to Michael after his abusive behavior and uncontrollable rages. This event made her realize the harm it was causing their children, and she knew she had to leave the marriage. Although the divorce was difficult for Tasha after 2 decades together, she prioritized the safety and well-being of her children over her commitment to the marriage. On December 21, 2022, Tasha filed for divorce from her husband, Michael. However, she requested that the divorce papers be delivered after the holidays, wanting one last normal Christmas for her 5 children before separating. Tasha anticipated that Michael's behavior would worsen once the papers were delivered, and she sought to shield their children from potential repercussions during the holidays. The divorce papers were delivered to Michael at his office on December 27th. Michael contacted Tasha and conversed as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. During the call, he asked Tasha to leave their home but demanded that she leave their children behind. Tasha was adamant that she would not leave without the children. Tasha took the children to her mother's house in Lynn, Utah, despite Michael's objections. That evening, Michael went to his mother-in-law's house and asked Tasha to go out with him, but she refused. Tasha told friends that she felt uneasy being alone with Michael. After Tasha filed for divorce, her mother, Gail Earle, moved in to support Tasha and the children. However, Michael's behavior made the situation worse. Instead of leaving the house, Michael moved into the basement, which also served as a gym. He slept on a sleeping bag on the floor, used a pillow, and hung his clothes on a hanger on a couch outside the door. Tasha shared her concerns with her friends about a major problem she had discovered. She discovered that $220,000 had disappeared from the children's savings accounts. After further investigation, she discovered that Michael was responsible for secretly transferring money without telling her. Additionally, Tasha inherited several weapons from her late father, including shotguns and handguns. However, in early January 2023, she noticed that all of these weapons were missing from her home. A subsequent investigation revealed that Michael had taken these weapons, leaving Tasha and her family unprotected and vulnerable in the event of an emergency. Macy, the eldest daughter of Michael and Tasha, has told several friends that she supports her parents' divorce. She feels that the presence of her father, Michael, in the home has caused tension and she wishes for peace in the separation. Macy has even taken steps to document her father's behavior, secretly recording him with a hidden phone when he acts erratically. She has confided to a friend that she is gathering evidence to support her parents' divorce. However, her mother, Tasha, found the phone and took it away. Macy's younger sister, Briley, faced a difficult home life due to constant trouble. To escape, Briley often went to a neighbor's house, where she found comfort in playing with the neighbor's grandchildren, who were children about her age. She told a friend that she was really relieved when her parents got divorced and was even looking forward to buying some new books, but she didn't dare tell her father because she was afraid he would be angry. On January 3, 2023, Tasha met with her attorney to discuss her divorce from her abusive husband Michael. At the time, Michael was still living in the family home, but had recently moved into the basement, which provided Tasha with some relief. Her attorneys asked her if she ever felt concerned for her safety or that of her children because of Michael's erratic behavior. Despite Michael's occasional outbursts, Tasha told her attorneys that she never felt her safety or that of her children was threatened. In retrospect, it is clear that Tasha's optimism and misplaced trust in her husband were tragically misplaced. The investigation into the shooting of Michael Haight's family was a difficult and disturbing process for police as they reconstructed the events that led to the tragedy. A chilling discovery emerged from digital evidence collected from the family's computers and cell phones. On December 30th, just days before the shooting, Michael made a disturbing Google search at 10:41 p.m. He searched for information about guns and shootings, which, combined with other evidence, suggested a dark intent. Search queries included questions about how loud a 9mm gun is, how to recognize a gunshot, and what to do if you hear a gunshot in your neighborhood. In a letter Michael wrote before he took his own life, he said he would rather rot in hell than endure what he described as his wife's controlling behavior. Michael expressed that he could not endure the situation for another day and was determined to end the manipulation and control he had endured. Michael's letter expressed deep frustration and despair. He had repeatedly asked for help, but no one seemed to listen. In this letter, Michael emphasized his determination not to become a burden to society. The details of the letter he left behind shocked and disbelieving many. Michael's actions were calculated and premeditated. He had planned the murder carefully, ensuring that his wife and children would not find out until it was too late. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lisa Holm. Lisa Holm was born on February 7, 1998 in a small town in Sweden. It is a peaceful place where she lives with her parents and older sister. Lisa is a kind, positive, and determined person. Even before finishing her studies, she decided that she wanted to go to Australia to study architecture. Lisa has also had a lot of experience traveling with her family, visiting many other countries. In the summer of 2015, when Lisa turned 17, she finally found her first job at a cafe about a 40-minute drive from home. During the first few weeks, her parents still drove her to work. However, not long after, her father decided to buy her a scooter so that she could get around on her own. Lisa had this type of driver's license before she turned 18, which is the age required to apply for a car driver's license. She was very happy to receive this gift because it was an opportunity for her to go to work by herself without having to rely on others. However, in the first few weeks, her father still accompanied her by car because Lisa lacked experience driving on the road. She only worked on weekends, and her father accompanied her every morning and evening. This habit continued until June 7th, when he finally allowed her to drive herself to the cafe. Around lunchtime, her parents decided to visit her at work and have lunch together. That day, the cafe was quite crowded, so Lisa was very busy with work. She took a short break to have lunch with her parents, then they returned home. At 6:23 p.m., Lisa sent a text message to her father saying that she was coming home. Just 3 minutes later, her father received a call from Lisa, but no one answered. He heard some voices in the background and thought that Lisa had accidentally called his number while talking to her colleague. He also heard the sound of a car door closing. He called Lisa's name several times, but no one answered. Then, he ended the call and started waiting for her to come home. However, she did not appear. After an hour, Lisa's parents began to worry. They thought something might have happened to her on the way since she should have arrived by now. This was the first time she had ridden a scooter alone, and her father was very concerned about her safety. He tried calling her several times, but Lisa's phone was turned off. After waiting for a while, her father decided to set off, hoping to meet Lisa on the way because she could have taken the shortest route. Her father was afraid that Lisa might have had an accident, so he drove carefully, paying attention to the road but did not see his daughter. Finally, he went to the cafe but could not find Lisa. When he arrived at her workplace, he noticed that Lisa's scooter was parked in front of the building. At that moment, he panicked because he could not find his daughter despite having come all this way. When he saw her scooter, he immediately calmed down, thinking that maybe she was just late for work for some reason. However, there was no one in the cafe, and he noticed something else. Lisa's scooter key was still in the ignition, with a helmet dangling from the handle. These things made him believe that something was wrong with his daughter. She would never leave the key in the scooter while leaving it unattended in the parking lot. Meanwhile, Lisa's mother contacted the cafe owner, hoping to find clues about her daughter's whereabouts. However, the cafe owner claimed that he did not know where Lisa was. According to the cafe owner, Lisa had called the staff around 6 p.m. and they told her that they were closing the cafe. After the call from Lisa's mother, the cafe owner immediately got in his car and went to the cafe. On the way, the cafe owner also contacted 4 friends who lived nearby, asking them to help find Lisa. When the cafe owner arrived, they began searching both the cafe and the surrounding area. They hoped that Lisa might have decided to take the bus instead of the scooter. Lisa's mother and sister drove to the bus station in their town to check the schedule. Unfortunately, Lisa was not on the bus. Her family immediately contacted the police. It was dark. The police quickly expanded the search. The fact that Lisa's motorbike was left in the parking lot with the keys made them consider the possibility that Lisa had been kidnapped. Such incidents are quite rare in Sweden, especially in the remote rural area where she lived. Therefore, the police quickly mobilized teams with sniffer dogs, while other officers began knocking on doors near the cafe. When Lisa's classmates and friends learned about her missing, they shared information about the case on social media, hoping to attract more attention and find witnesses. The search went on all night but yielded no results. On Monday morning, the police department announced Lisa's missing to the public and asked anyone with information to come forward. At the same time, a man working in a warehouse across the street from the cafe found a motorcycle glove on the floor and reported it to the police. Detectives had checked the warehouse the night Lisa went missing but did not find the glove. They later showed the glove to Lisa's parents, who confirmed that it belonged to their daughter. This further strengthened the theory that Lisa had been kidnapped, and the police intensified their search efforts. By that time, news of Lisa's missing had captured the nation's attention, and hundreds of volunteers had joined the search. On Tuesday, the police received some alarming new leads. Volunteers searched the area around a dirt road a few hundred yards from the cafe. During the investigation of the crime scene, investigators collected several pieces of evidence related to Lisa, including a phone case, a receipt, a ticket, and a broken smartphone screen. They later found other parts of the smartphone, Lisa's ID card, and several other receipts scattered along the dirt road. This evidence made the police almost certain that Lisa had been kidnapped. They mobilized every available resource for the search, and the number of participants grew. The case became a major news topic in Sweden, and hundreds of volunteers from across the country joined the search. A local missing persons organization also joined the effort. The scale of the search for Lisa became the largest in the country's modern history, with more than 1,000 people involved in total. The police received numerous calls from people with information about Lisa's missing. One woman reported that before Lisa went missing, she had gone jogging. While she was jogging, a man standing next to his car stopped her and asked for directions to a city she had never heard of. He spoke to her in English. She tried to give him directions using Google Maps, but he asked her to get in his car and show him the way using his navigation device. The woman found this request suspicious, so she refused and continued walking. She also told the police that she believed she had seen the man among the workers repairing a warehouse across from the cafe. Lisa's co-workers shared a testimony with the police. On the day of her missing, a witness noticed two men standing across from the coffee shop, looking in the direction of where she worked. The witness didn't think much of it at the time, but after Lisa went missing, they decided to share it with the police. The next day, Wednesday, Lisa's father and some friends searched the dirt road where her belongings had been found the day before. When they went a little further, they found Lisa's driver's license and house keys. This suggested that Lisa may have been abducted and forced to leave the coffee shop via this road. Her kidnapper may have thrown her belongings out of the car or other vehicle they used to abduct her. Police and volunteers focused their efforts in this area, but no other items were found. That evening, a friend of Lisa's father was returning home from his search. As he passed the coffee shop, he noticed that the police had left the warehouse where Lisa's gloves were found. The man decided to go inside the coffee shop to look for any other clues. This time, he used his car's flashlight to walk around the premises since it was dark. While there, he noticed a shiny object lying on the floor. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was a pair of women's earrings. The man later reported this to the police, who showed the earrings to Lisa's parents. They confirmed that the jewelry belonged to their daughter. The police then sealed off the shed and conducted a more thorough inspection. The lead detective explained that on the first day of the search for Lisa, the priority was to find her, so the shed had not been fully inspected, and they may have missed small items such as earrings. After conducting an in-depth investigation, forensic experts and sniffer dogs were called in. They discovered a remarkable piece of evidence hidden behind a wall, which was traces of human feces. Although it seemed unrelated to the case, forensic experts developed an hypothesis regarding it. When criminals commit serious and horrifying crimes, their bodies secrete a large amount of adrenaline, which can lead them to be unable to control their urge to urinate. This often happens to murderers, who frequently urinate before or during the crime. Based on the discovery of Lisa's gloves and earrings in the warehouse area, the police hypothesized that if she had been kidnapped, the perpetrator might have dragged her into this building. Therefore, detectives did not rule out the possibility that the kidnapper may have consumed a large amount of adrenaline, leading to an inability to control himself and necessitating urination at the scene. Consequently, fecal samples were taken and sent for DNA analysis. On Friday, the search area was expanded, and volunteers went to a farm about 3.2 kilometers from the cafe. This farm complex consisted of large buildings where many people worked. The search team decided to check the entire area. However, after they arrived, two men appeared at the farm. They spoke no Swedish and only communicated in English. One of them claimed that the police had come to the farm to check on them. But the leader of the search party did not believe him, as he thought he would be notified if it were true. So he decided to continue searching. The two men walked around the farm, observing for a while before driving away. After about an hour, the search team discovered a pile of branches behind the cowshed. Upon closer inspection, they found a motorcycle helmet, jacket, and headphones. Police quickly arrived on the scene and confirmed that these items belonged to Lisa. They then sent forensic experts to the farm to conduct a more thorough investigation. The detectives heard stories about two strange men who tried to stop volunteers from checking the farm. The police also recalled a report about a woman who had encountered a man acting suspiciously while jogging and who spoke English. In fact, they had some idea of his identity from the very beginning of the search. They visited the houses surrounding the cafe. In one of the houses, two Lithuanian brothers lived with the wife of one of them. All three of them spoke no Swedish and communicated only in English. They were the only people within a few miles who did not speak the local language. The police also had other indirect reasons to suspect them. The brothers worked at the warehouse across the street from the cafe and at the farm where Lisa's helmet was found. They were familiar with these locations and the road leading to their house. Since there were no other suspects, the police decided to question all three of them. Forensic experts, along with volunteers, went to the farm to continue the investigation. They noticed an old trailer, surrounded by tall grass, that looked like it hadn't been used in years. However, the grass around the door was flattened, indicating that something had been there recently. In addition, the grass under the door was also matted down, indicating that the door had not been opened for a long time. When the forensic experts opened the door, they were immediately hit by a strong stench of decay. Inside the trailer were several wardrobes, most of which had previously been used as changing rooms for workers. All but one were locked, leading experts to suspect that Lisa's body might be in one of them. They began opening each one and eventually discovered Lisa's body in an open cupboard, hidden behind a pile of old clothes and rags. Despite the small size of the cupboard, the perpetrator had managed to squeeze the victim inside. Lisa had been tied up with a rope around her neck and duct tape wrapped around her head. Her pants had been pulled down, and her shirt had been pulled up. Medical experts determined that Lisa had died from strangulation, but no signs of sexual assault were found. All of her clothes were turned over to the lab for testing. As news of the discovery of her body spread rapidly across the country, headlines in Sweden focused on Lisa's abduction. When her body was found and the public learned of her brutal murder, the incident shocked the entire nation. Since such crimes are extremely rare in Sweden, everyone was taken aback that someone could commit such a brutal act. On the same day her body was discovered, something unusual and quite strange happened. A YouTube user came across a video posted 13 days before the murder, titled 13, which had a countdown timer. The most disturbing detail was that the name of the channel that posted the video was Lisa. News of this video quickly spread across the media, leaving many people stunned by the coincidence. Some began to speculate that someone had predicted the murder, but the truth was much simpler. Someone had likely changed the channel name and video title after discovering Lisa's body. This could have been to suggest another conspiracy theory or just a cruel joke. The police are trying their best to quickly find the culprit in this murder. When Lisa's body was discovered, investigators brought in the owners of the farm, Neregis Belavicius, his brother and his brother's wife, for questioning. However, all of them denied any involvement in the case. They claimed that at the time of the kidnapping, they were at home together to provide each other with an alibi. According to their story, Neregis was sleeping in his room while his wife was preparing dinner and Neregis' brother was on the computer. Around 8 p.m., Neregis woke up and went to the gas station to buy pizza and cigarettes. The police had some doubts about the testimony of them, as they might have been protecting each other. Although the police collected their DNA samples, investigators still did not find direct evidence linking them to the murder case. Forensic experts worked diligently at relevant locations, such as the barn and the farm, using all available resources and manpower, and their efforts finally paid off. In the barn area, there was a small room resembling an office, with a large window overlooking the cafe. When examining this room, experts discovered 15 different male semen stains on the wall and floor near the window. This suggested that someone had stood there, observing the cafe staff, including Lisa. The collected semen samples were promptly sent to the laboratory, where experts extracted DNA profiles from these samples. The results of the DNA analysis showed that all 15 semen traces matched the DNA of Neregis. Additionally, fecal samples found in the barn also matched his DNA. In the adjacent room, which had previously been used to store cow's milk, forensic experts found a pipe about 2 feet above the floor, covered in a thick layer of dust except for a small strip. The size of the strip matched the rope used to strangle Lisa. Blood was found on the pipe, and DNA analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Neregis. On the floor near the pipe, they also found a piece of rope that matched the one on the pipe. Experts conducted tests and identified 2 DNA samples, Lisa's and Neregis's. This was an important step in the police investigation. They had connected the suspect to the rope used to kill the victim. Additionally, a strand of Lisa's hair was found in the room. Another crucial piece of evidence was Neregis's DNA found on her jacket. Based on this evidence, the police believed that Lisa had been murdered there. Police pieced together a similar sequence of events. Neregis had been observing the cafe for some time, and when Lisa was alone in the parking lot, he approached her. Based on the jogger's account, he may have pretended to ask Lisa for directions to a certain city or used some other tactic to trick her. Neregis may have then lured Lisa into his car to enter a route into the GPS system. Since Lisa was a kind person who always tried to help others, she may have agreed. Once she was in the car, the perpetrator covered her mouth and drove to a secluded place. At the scene, the perpetrator tied a rope around the victim's neck and hung her from a pipe. According to doctors, this action may have excited the perpetrator so much that he experienced an adrenaline rush, causing him to defecate on the spot. After the victim died, he placed Lisa's body in his car and drove to the farm, throwing her belongings out the window on the way. He hid the victim's body in the trailer's storage locker and covered it with old clothes. The entire process took less than an hour. Despite the overwhelming evidence, he maintained his innocence. His wife and brother were not involved and were released. They quickly left Sweden and returned to Lithuania. Preparations for the trial were intense. Neregis claimed that he had worked in that warehouse for a long time, so his DNA could have been present due to his work. Additionally, he had alibis from his wife and brother, although there were doubts about the reliability of both sources in court. This could work in his favor, although many uncertainties remained. However, the presence of Neregis's DNA on the victim's clothes could only be explained by his direct contact with her on the day of the murder. Furthermore, the police also found a witness who saw Neregis's car near the cafe just before and after Lisa's abduction. According to the witness, The car had traveled several times on the road between the cafe and the farm at a time when Narigis was believed to be asleep at home, according to his brother and his wife. After months of investigation, experts used the most advanced equipment to examine all the collected evidence. They found traces of Narigis's DNA on most of Lisa's clothing, including inside her underwear. With public interest piqued, the investigators continued to search for more clues that could influence the proceedings and strengthen Narigis's connection to the case. They traveled to Lithuania to speak with his wife and his brother again. The woman maintained that he had not left the house between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m., but when his brother was questioned, the detectives quickly obtained the information they wanted. After presenting the man with all the evidence against his brother and the details of what he had done to the 17-year-old girl, the man decided to cooperate with the police. He claimed that Narigis was not home that night, returning only around 7:30 p.m. He looked dirty and immediately washed all his clothes. As the police began questioning all the residents and visiting their homes, Narigis whispered to his brother to tell the police that he had been home during that time. Narigis later explained that he was afraid of being charged with a crime he did not commit, as he was an immigrant and had no alibi at the time of the abduction. The brother truly believed his cousin was innocent, but after hearing all the evidence, he realized that his initial thoughts might have been incorrect. Lisa's funeral took place just a month after her murder. The church where the funeral was held could only accommodate 130 people, but many more came to say goodbye to her. The organizers decided to set up extra chairs and screens outside so that everyone could watch the ceremony. The trial began 4 months after the murder and once again attracted national attention, placing everyone involved under a great deal of pressure. Narigis's lawyer claimed that his client's DNA could have been found on the victim's clothes because he had worked in the barn. However, the prosecutor argued that this explanation did not make sense, especially concerning Lisa's underwear. The only way the suspect's DNA could have ended up there would be if he had touched the victim's underwear. The lawyer was unable to produce any concrete evidence to prove his client's innocence. Instead, he theorized that the real killer was Narigis's brother. According to this theory, the brother took multiple samples of Narigis's DNA and deliberately left them on the victim's body and at the crime scene to confuse the case. But this defense was quickly dismissed. The trial lasted a month, and Narigis was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in a high-security prison. Although in Sweden, this prison offers the same amenities as a 3-star hotel. The lawyer appealed but was rejected. In early 2017, Narigis himself applied to be transferred to a prison in his home country of Lithuania for reasons that remain unclear. Lithuanian prisons are significantly worse than those in Sweden. Yet the court still accepted the defendant's request. After all, providing comfortable conditions of detention cost Swedish taxpayers hundreds of dollars per day per prisoner. That same year, Narigis appealed to the Lithuanian court, and his sentence was reduced from life to 15 years. However, his joy was short-lived. A few weeks later, the court overturned the decision, and Narigis was once again sentenced to life in prison, with no chance of returning to a comfortable cell in Sweden. 5 years later, in August 2022, Narigis was transferred to a prison in Lithuania. While other prisoners were being moved to another ward, one of them attacked and seriously injured Narigis, leading to his death on the way to the hospital. As for the suspect's wife, her involvement in the case has not been completely ruled out. The police stressed that it was almost impossible for her to be directly involved in the kidnapping or murder. If that were the case, experts would have found her DNA on the victim's clothes or belongings. However, it cannot be ruled out that she knew about Narigis's crime and tried to help him escape punishment by providing a false alibi. Narigis's brother also raised questions. Cafe employees reported seeing 2 men standing near the barn and watching them. Assuming that one of them was Narigis himself, the other man could have been his brother. However, The man's DNA was not found in the barn or on Lisa's clothes, making it unlikely that he was involved in the murder. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Valentina Tres Palacios. Valentina Tres Palacios was born on December 16, 2001, in Bogota, Colombia. She is currently studying international business and commerce, but her true passion is music. Since childhood, she has loved music and pursued this passion by studying and becoming a professional DJ. After receiving her DJ certificate, Valentina started her career in Colombia and quickly made a name for herself due to her talent and exceptional musicality. Throughout her career, she has made many friends from different countries. Valentina has had the opportunity to travel to many countries to perform and showcase her talent. She has performed with famous musicians and has toured more than 20 cities in her country. She has also participated in important international events, including festivals in Colombia, Chile, Mexico, Brazil, and Peru. With her talent and musicality, Valentina has been recognized as having a bright future ahead. She is loved and sought after across the country and regularly performs at top nightclubs. Valentina is a cheerful young woman who is always smiling and loves to party. She also maintains social media accounts where she shares her performances and updates her followers on her daily life. Valentina shares two important aspects of her life on social media: her growing popularity in the music industry and her romantic relationship with John Poulos, an American she met online in late 2021. As their relationship progressed, their communication improved significantly. Initially, Valentina was not looking for a serious relationship, but she eventually became attracted to John, and their relationship turned into a romance. John Poulos, a resident of the United States, showed a deep interest in Valentina's life. Valentina invested a lot in their relationship, and John supported her financially to help achieve her dreams. Valentina took a cosmetic course, which included hyaluronic acid injections into her lips, and later, enhancements to her cheekbones. John also recommended surgery in silicone breast implants, which significantly changed her appearance within a few months. These changes made Valentina the talk of the town. John sent her money regularly and eventually decided to marry her. John Poulos initially planned to move to Colombia to live with Valentina. However, Valentina became suspicious of the relationship because she knew that John was extremely jealous and had hired a private investigator to monitor her every contact and activity. By January 2023, John had committed to marrying Valentina and began arranging the necessary paperwork. He had also rented an apartment in the northern part of Bogota, where he planned to spend weekends with Valentina until they found a permanent place to live. However, on January 22, 2023, a garbage collector discovered a blue suitcase in a dumpster near a park in Colombia. The suitcase was taped shut and surrounded by several trash bags. When the worker opened the suitcase, they discovered the body of a woman whose head was clearly visible inside. The worker was so frightened by the discovery that he drove several blocks away before calling the police. The Capitol Police Department quickly dispatched a team to investigate the incident. The officers who arrived at the scene witnessed a horrific sight. The victim's body was found in a suitcase. After several hours of investigation, the police identified the victim as Valentina Tres Palacios. An initial examination of the body showed no signs of violence, no weapons or knives were found, and there was no dismemberment. However, after opening the suitcase, detectives discovered that the victim was wearing pajamas with a belt. This suggested that the victim may have been attacked while she was sleeping. Additionally, police found a black cardboard box inside the suitcase containing items that could help identify the body, including a student ID card, a password that the victim often used, and several other documents and personal belongings. Investigators discovered something strange among the items they collected. These types of documents are not often found in similar cases. After finding the suitcase containing the body, the police contacted Valentina's family and learned that she had attended a party with friends on Saturday, January 21st. Forensic examination results showed that she had been hit multiple times in the head. Her body was found with severe injuries, including heavy bleeding on the right side of her tongue and 5 cuts around her neck, indicating that she had been strangled. After Valentina's murder, the police began questioning her friends and relatives. They started asking questions about Valentina's relationships. As a famous DJ with a hot body, she was a very popular and well-connected person. Among those questioned, a friend of Valentina's expressed concern and suspected Valentina's boyfriend, John Poulos, of being involved in the case because of his excessively jealous behavior. At this point, suspicions turned to Valentina's boyfriend, John, and a closer investigation into him was launched. The police initially relied on surveillance cameras around John's home, examining his actions on the days of the crime. John Poulos arrived in Bogotá at approximately 8:53 p.m. on January 19th. Surveillance cameras recorded him entering the apartment with a blue suitcase identical to the one used to contain Valentina's body. This information made John the first suspect to come to the attention of the police, as he was also the last person to see Valentina alive. When detectives attempted to contact John, the call was routed to voicemail. Valentina's family had appreciated John's calm and kind personality, and they did not think he was involved in this terrible crime, especially since John and Valentina had a wedding planned. Suspicions about John grew when investigators visited his rental apartment. There, they discovered that John had left and was nowhere to be found on Monday, January 23rd. It is worth noting that John Poulos deleted his social media pages early in the morning after Valentina's death, making him the only suspect at the time. Investigators analyzed surveillance camera footage in the building from Friday evening to early Sunday morning. This helped them clarify the events that took place. The Colombian police and the prosecutor's office also reviewed several hours of video footage from cameras in the area where Valentina and John were. Camera footage and WhatsApp conversations played a key role in uncovering Valentina's final hours. Valentina and John were scheduled to meet on January 20th. John arrived on the 19th, cleaned the apartment they would share, and then texted Valentina. Valentina and John began arguing that night because Valentina was partying while he was away. John questioned whether Valentina was with any men. Valentina refused to answer, believing he was jealous and suspicious. John eventually reminded Valentina to meet on the 20th. Before the meeting, Valentina planned to visit some beauty salons for eyelash and hair extensions to feel more confident. However, on the 20th, Valentina and John disagreed about the date and only clarified their plans when surveillance cameras recorded activities at Valentina's apartment that evening. According to the surveillance cameras, on the 20th, John helped Valentina pack her luggage at 6 p.m. when the two moved into their new home. Valentina also made a video call to her mother and said she would return after the trip. The video also showed Valentina with John Poulos, who had rented a car to transport Valentina's belongings. Valentina and John were caught on surveillance footage entering her new apartment at 7 p.m. Valentina and John were caught on camera engaging in some activities before heading home. It was Saturday, January 21st, at 1 a.m. They took a taxi to a nightclub in Southeast New York where Valentina was performing. When they arrived at the nightclub around 4 a.m., Valentina immediately started working. John Poulos stayed with her while she got ready. At around 5 a.m., Valentina's performance ended, and they then went into the club's office to meet the owner, his wife, and a companion. Valentina and John left the club around 6 a.m. That was the last time Valentina's friends saw her. She walked out of the club smiling and seemingly fine. Valentina reached out to a friend by phone on Saturday and said she had no plans to go anywhere. She planned to stay home with John and perhaps go out to dinner or cook together. Valentina's last conversation with her friend was via video at 9 p.m. Valentina's mother, Laura Hidalgo, said her 13-year-old son was the last person to talk to Valentina via video. Valentina was lying in bed with John, and they appeared happy. The family has no further information about their situation. On January 21st, at 10:43 p.m., surveillance cameras in the building recorded Valentina and John. Valentina was looking out of the apartment door while John stood in front of it, looking pensive, pacing back and forth, and occasionally grimacing. John was again caught on camera on Sunday, January 22nd, at 9 a.m. This time, he left the room with 2 bags of trash, and Valentina was not seen. John then drove to the parking lot, picked up a silver car, and put the bags in the back seat. Next, he returned to the apartment, took 2 suitcases from the trunk, and brought them back to the apartment. At the apartment, a gray blanket was placed on top of the suitcase that John had taken out. It was 10 a.m. He put this suitcase on the cart for transport. A second bag was placed next to it, and in this bag was Valentina's head wrapped in a blanket. Before leaving, John observed the parking lot after parking and noticed that there was no one nearby. He also checked the area around the elevator to make sure no one was getting off. Then he quickly returned to the car and tried to lift the heavy suitcase into the trunk. Finally, he took the bag and put it in the car, then drove away. The surveillance camera recorded the car circulating at various points in the city. Around noon, John appeared to be looking for a safe place to dump the suitcase. The car then pulled into a parking lot and parked near a dumpster. At 3 p.m., John got out of the car, looked around to see if anyone was following him, then took out the suitcase, which appeared to be very heavy, and threw it into the dumpster. He then returned to the car, took out a bag, and placed it in the dumpster before closing the lid and exiting the parking lot. The car then traveled west until it reached El Dorado International Airport, where John was last seen at 4:30 p.m. The Department of Homeland Security announced a $1 million reward on Monday, January 23rd, for information leading to the arrest of John Tres Palacios. Colombian authorities sought Interpol's assistance in issuing an arrest warrant for John as he fled the country's borders. On January 24th, Panamanian National Police arrested John at El Dorado International Airport, just as he was preparing to leave for Turkey. Colombian authorities quickly began the process of deporting John from the country after Valentina's death. More than 14 criminal investigators were involved in the investigation, gathering evidence to clarify the truth. The result of this investigation included the analysis of more than 300 hours of video footage from security cameras, conducted in cooperation with the Public Prosecutor's Office. An important discovery in the case was the finding of Valentina's cell phone near El Dorado International Airport. A security guard happened to see the phone on the grass while walking near a gas station and picked it up. After realizing that the phone did not have a SIM card, he took it home with the intention of selling it, not knowing it belonged to Valentina. However, the security guard's wife called him after realizing that the photo of the girl on the phone's wallpaper matched the photos seen on social media, as well as the photo of the young woman found dead in the trash. Unfortunately, the phone was put up for sale and repackaged because someone wanted to buy it. After leaving the nightclub, John and Valentina's driver gave his statement. The driver had been assigned to take Valentina and John to a nightclub in the south of the city. When John stopped for a moment, Valentina got into the car and shouted that she had written something. When the driver looked at her, Valentina seemed uncertain, and the driver checked his phone. The driver discovered that Valentina had warned him that she was in danger in a Spanish text message to customer service. John then asked Valentina if she was okay. While the car was being driven, John and Valentina conversed in English. The driver asked them if they were bilingual, and they answered yes. When they left around 4 a.m. that same day, the driver went to the nightclub with the couple. He then knew nothing about the incident until he was informed of Valentina's death a few days later. In the WhatsApp version open on Valentina's computer, a friend of Valentina's in Caragana provided the prosecutor's office in Bogotá with conversations on Valentina's computer, which offered clues about what happened. One of the key pieces of evidence found in the investigation of Valentina's case was a discovery by one of her friends, who found the suitcase containing her body. This suitcase was believed to have been in the same location as Valentina's. The friend also said that on the day Valentina was in Bogotá, she received messages from John Poulos and several selfies of him with the luggage. The suitcase John was carrying was very similar to the one investigators found in the case, though the color was indistinguishable. While it is unclear why Valentina left the WhatsApp session open on her friend's computer, the messages helped investigators understand what happened at night when Valentina was killed. Forensic investigators determined that she died of asphyxiation due to being strangled with a rope. There were also signs of violence on her body. The autopsy revealed that Valentina died in her sleep. Criminologists came to this conclusion because she was wearing pajamas. All the evidence pointed to John Poulos being present at the scene. However, in the indictment, John did not admit responsibility for Valentina's death. He argued that his arrest in Panama was illegal because he did not have a lawyer to assist him. John was not proficient enough in Spanish, and a translator was not present during the 5-hour hearing. John was charged with involvement in Valentina's death and deleted his social media accounts. John Poulos was born on May 19, 1987, in Wisconsin, USA. He is married and has 3 children. However, he also has a criminal record related to violence against women, including a restraining order from his ex-wife. One of the women who had a relationship with John Poulos revealed that he frequently visited pornographic websites, spending up to 5 to 6 hours a day on them. She also commented that John often exhibited strange behavior, such as fantasizing in telling ghost stories. Another model who interacted with John Poulos on social media said that she knew him as being from Texas, USA. She stopped contacting him after he made a strange comment, including the words jealous and death. Specifically, John asked her, "If I was at a bar, would you be willing to talk to me?" When the woman refused, John replied, "There's a chance one of us will die of jealousy." The woman also said that although John donated money to her, she never chatted with him via video because his communication style was often erratic. It's important to note that John also displayed some suspicious behavior towards Valentina. He contacted Valentina on social media and began sending her money persistently and consistently. In this case, treating women like property was a red flag that the women overlooked, and they initially trusted him. John thought he could buy their trust with money from the start. Authorities investigating the case believe that John Poulos thought that the waste disposal system in Colombia was similar to that in the United States, where he lived. In his mind, the waste would settle in a container and eventually be disposed of. However, Poulos overlooked the fact that recyclers and people living on the streets regularly rummage through trash looking for items they can sell or use. John Poulos is currently being held in a separate cell in Bogotá. The next step is to prove that all the evidence links him to the crime and to find the real motive behind this horrific murder in Colombia. The criminal code stipulates a prison sentence of up to 50 years for the crime John was charged with. John Poulos was subsequently sentenced to 42 years and 8 months in prison, was banned from approaching or attempting to contact the Tres Palacios family for 20 years, and was ordered to be deported from Colombia after serving his sentence. John's defense team said they would appeal the verdict. They argued that John was innocent of Valentina's murder. Valentina's situation is similar to many others. She thought she had found true love, but it turned out to be a mistake. Does anyone feel safe connecting with strangers on social media? Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Sarah McLynn. Harold Sasko was born in Titusville, Florida, on September 11, 1961, and later became a resident of Kansas City. His family had 12 siblings, and he was known to be responsible and help his siblings with housework. After college, Harold opened his own pizzeria and expanded his business, opening 2 more restaurants in Lawrence and Topeka. In 1990, he relocated to Lawrence with his then-wife Anna and their 3-year-old daughter Mendez. Following this move, he also launched a 3rd restaurant in the nearby city of Topeka. However, his dedication to his business led to problems in his personal life, causing a rift in his marriage and eventually a divorce. Harold was a respected member of his church and prided himself on being a dedicated man. Those who know him find him to be kind, thoughtful, and meticulous in his management work. However, on January 17, 2014, Harold vanished unexpectedly, leaving behind many unanswered questions surrounding his disappearance. The day started like any other Friday, with the weekend just ahead. People continued to go about their daily business, including the staff at his pizza shop. However, when they arrived at work, they found the restaurant deserted and quiet. Typically, Harold would be there to open the kitchen, but he was nowhere to be found. What's more, no one had heard from him in several days, which was unusual. Concerned for Harold's safety, staff contacted police and asked them to check on him at his home on West 26th Street. Later that day, an officer visited Harold's residence, knocking on the front door and window, but receiving no response. The officer then looked inside and saw a man lying face down on the floor. Police entered the house and confirmed the man was Harold. He was lying in a pool of his own blood and had clearly been dead for several days. Moreover, the scene suggested that Harold's death was no accident. His hands were bound behind his back with zip ties, indicating that someone had intentionally restrained him. His legs were also tied, further suggesting a deliberate act. The most disturbing detail, however, was the deep gash in his throat, which had severed the bone and made survival impossible. The officers were confronted with a gruesome scene. In addition to the ties and the fatal wound, the police found several empty bottles at the opposite end of the room, as well as a phone and laptop that didn't belong to Harold. They also noted that Harold's car was missing from the driveway. One peculiar piece of evidence was the word "freedom" scrawled on the wall in Harold's blood. As the police presence in the Harold's house, this attracted the attention of curious neighbors. The officers decided to use this to their advantage by asking more questions. Through these investigations, that they discovered Harold wasn't living alone. Neighbors reported that he was living with a girl he referred to as his stepdaughter. This information proved crucial for the investigation, as it revealed that there was someone who not only knew Harold well and had regular contact with him but was also likely present at the crime scene. It was eventually confirmed that the stepdaughter was 18-year-old Sarah McLynn, who had been living with Harold for the past 2 years. However, Sarah was missing. This caused the police to become suspicious. Finding her became a top priority, as her disappearance left many unanswered questions. She could have been a victim, witness, suspect, or none of these. It was crucial to locate her. Then police notified Harold's family and friends about the incident. A funeral for Harold was planned for February 8, 3 weeks after the incident. The police asked the public to contact Douglas County forensic investigators with any information about Sarah's location. A $1,000 reward was offered for any information that could help find her. Sarah McLynn was born on July 9, 1994, in Topeka, Kansas. She was raised in a loving family with her parents and 2 siblings. And she had an especially strong bond with her sister. As a child, Sarah was known for being shy and kind. She spent most of her childhood being homeschooled, which limited her social circle to her neighborhood. However, her life took a challenging turn when her parents divorced during her teenage years. This significant change had a profound impact on Sarah, making her more vulnerable. As she adjusted to her new situation, she encountered challenges that made her teenage years even more difficult. After her parents separated, Sarah's previously sheltered life left her vulnerable to people who exploited her innocence. Sadly, she experienced abuse from a neighbor, which altered her personality and behavior. Her mother was deeply concerned about this change, because she found it difficult to adapt to the new way of life among them. Sarah started secretly leaving her house at night to spend time with a bad crowd. This led to her frequently using drugs and alcohol to cope with her emotional pain. After her parents' divorce, Sarah, 14, no longer wanted to live at home and found a job at a pizzeria to start a new life. Her manager, Harold, 50, initially seemed kind, but rumors among staff suggested otherwise. He told other managers to only hire young, attractive women. While working at the pizzeria, Sarah's routine consisted of waking up, going to work, spending time there, and returning home. However, she often spent her nights drinking before going back to her family's house. Reports indicate that Sarah was usually sober only at work, but even then, her work efficiency is still not high. Despite frequently showing up drunk and nearly getting fired multiple times, she kept her job, likely because Harold felt sorry for her and knew she needed support. When Sarah turned 15, she experienced another traumatic incident, where a man attacked her and burned her with cigarettes. After that, Sarah's mental health, which was already fragile, deteriorated significantly. She stopped attending work, lost friendships, and fell into a deep depression. Within a year, at just 16 years old, she attempted to end her life. Thankfully, her family found her in time and called for medical help. Following a 5-month hospital stay, Sarah made a full recovery. Upon her hospital discharge, Sarah was touched by the support she received from her loved ones and friends. Among the messages of support she received, one in particular caught her attention, a message from Harold, who used to be her supervisor. Harold offered to be Sarah's confidant, someone she could confide in. He would drive her around, take her out to eat, and listen to her problems. Since Sarah had no one else to turn to, she eventually accepted Harold's help. During one of their outings, Sarah opened up to Harold about her past, sharing her traumatic experiences with men, her drinking, and other struggles. Harold realized that she wanted to move out of her family's house. Upon learning about Sarah's traumas, he suggested she move in with him. Although the offer raised some concerns, Sarah was in a vulnerable state, feeling lost and hurt. Harold's offer provided her with an escape, and at 17 years old, she agreed to live with him. Sarah's life seemed to settle down after she moved in with Hal. She found a new job, away from the pizzeria, and Harold took good care of her. Her dog moved in too, and she even thought about attending college. However, Sarah's mother, Michelle, was not pleased with the situation. She found Harold odd and the whole story suspicious. Whenever Michelle wanted to discuss this issue with Sarah, their conversation would become tense, and they would argue loudly, causing Sarah to distance herself even more. Michelle doubted that Harold's intentions were as pure as he claimed. She worried that Sarah was too naive to see the potential issues. After her parents' divorce, Sarah's father had cut off all contact, leaving a void that she was trying to fill. The situation became even more unsettling when Harold asked Sarah to call him Dad and told their neighbors that she was his stepdaughter. As the news spread, Sarah's colleagues started asking about her relationship with Harold. Sarah would tell them that he was just a friend, but from the outside, it seemed unusual for a 50-year-old man to take in a troubled 18-year-old girl. Her peers likely suspected that something was off. After Sarah turned 18, she felt uneasy as Harold's behavior changed drastically. He started buying her alcohol and illegal drugs, made jokes about them being in a romantic relationship, and even suggested a sexual relationship. Harold kept a record of everything he spent on her, including rent, cosmetics, and substances, in an attempt to make her feel indebted to him. He made it clear that she couldn't leave until she paid him back. As a result, Sarah felt trapped and eventually gave in to Harold's advances, leading to a 10-month period of a sexual relationship with the man she once considered a father figure. They had sex several times a week, and Sarah's only way to cope was to consume alcohol and use substances, further increasing her debt to Harold. Harold's behavior was inconsistent, often criticizing Sarah one moment and complimenting her the next. For instance, he would mock her appearance, specifically her nose, and then offer to pay for plastic surgery, which Sarah, unsure of herself, eventually agreed to. Harold treated her like an object he owned, rather than a person with feelings. He exerted control over her by covering expenses, including $16,000 for dumb implantation and planning to spend another $16,000 on breast implants. These costs would be added to her debt, forcing her to pay him back when she was financially able. Feeling trapped, she felt she had no way to escape this situation. Harold became even more controlling and threatening. He claimed he would not let her escape, which made her mental health problems worse. To cope with her situation, Sarah was prescribed antidepressants. However, this ended up adding to her financial burden, as she also had to pay for the medication. Sarah had reached her breaking point, and her mind was haunted by dark memories of her abusive past and the terrible burden of depression. She often found herself on the brink, struggling to cope. Just when she thought she had found someone she could trust, that person turned out to be an abuser. This was the final blow for Sarah, and she began to act in ways that would transform her from victim to killer. After visiting a pet store, Sarah purchased a rabbit and signed a waiver, then took it home. Later that evening, a manager from Harold's pizzeria visited her house for dinner and drinks. When he opened the refrigerator, he was shocked to find a rabbit carcass instead of beer. Sarah admitted to killing the rabbit and revealed that it was not her first victim. The manager, feeling utterly perplexed by the circumstances, accepted the dinner invitation out of politeness, but left for home afterwards. This was a significant warning sign that hinted at Sarah's potential for violence, but it was overlooked. It was later questioned whether Sarah was truly capable of harming a human being. Initially, Sarah was reported missing. However, as the investigation progressed, she became the prime suspect. Detectives soon discovered that she had packed her belongings, taken the dog, stolen a car, and left town. Although initially believed to be heading to Texas, Sarah changed her plans and went to Florida, drawn by the warmer weather and scenic ocean views. Based on this new information, she was officially declared a wanted person. Sarah was a prime suspect in Harold's murder and considered mentally unstable, posing a threat to others. As a result, she was the subject of a nationwide manhunt that lasted for 11 days, with many officers across the country on the lookout for her. On January 25, 2014, after evading capture for over a week, Sarah McLynn was finally apprehended in Everglades National Park. She was found sleeping in Harold's stolen car with a loaded gun beside her. The police also discovered $2,400 in cash, 2 additional guns, an axe, and several knives, one of which had Harold's blood on it. Following her arrest, Sarah underwent a 3-hour interrogation, during which she confessed to the murder. According to her account, on January 14, 2014, Harold returned home from work and decided to fix the broken sound system. He requested Sarah to bring him a beer, and then another, and another. Harold collapsed to the floor in exhaustion, unaware that Sarah had slipped a large dose of sleeping pills into one of the beers he was drinking. Sarah had already made up her mind that Harold had to be killed. Sarah restrained him with zip ties, grabbed a hunting knife, and slit his throat. As a result, Harold died shortly after. Following the incident, Sarah took a shower, washing off the blood while listening to her favorite music. She then called her workplace, claiming she would be out for a few days due to a family member's passing. Sarah packed her belongings, including a photo of her sister, took the dog, and fled in Harold's stolen car under the cover of night. To avoid detection, she left her cell phone and laptop behind. During the interrogation, Sarah openly discussed her motives. She explained that she had been trapped in the house Harold's, deeply in debt to he sought to control her. As a result, she became his target, suffered abuse, and was eventually treated as his property. Sarah's anger fueled her desire for revenge, and she was willing to face any consequences to achieve it. In her conversations, she revealed a disturbing fascination with violence and admitted to having thoughts of it for 2 years. Additionally, in a disturbing admission, Sarah confessed to killing rabbits simply out of curiosity. Sarah's confessions put her in a precarious situation, as she not only admitted to killing Harold but also took pleasure in violent acts. It became evident that Sarah would have to stand trial. However, her confessions also showed that she was a woman dealing with difficult mental health problems. Therefore, it was necessary for her to undergo a psychological evaluation to better understand her mental state. The evaluation would help identify any underlying psychological disorders, in addition to her newly expressed tendency towards violence and her reports of memory lapses, during which she felt detached from her own mind. After a thorough assessment, Sarah was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. As it turned out, Sarah had multiple personalities within her, each representing a different side of her complex character. These included Vanessa, a fierce warrior, Alice, the sensitive and emotional part, and Mila, a feminine, gentle side. However, the most tragic version of them was the unnamed individual who bore the full weight of the trauma and oppression. During Sarah's trial, her defense team centered argument around dissociative identity disorder. According to Sarah, one of her alternate personalities, Alice, had suicidal thoughts but was convinced by her other personalities not to harm herself. Instead, they collectively decided that killing Harold was the only solution. The defense team argued that Sarah was in a state of clinical dissociation when she committed the crime, implying that she was not fully in control of her actions. However, the prosecution argued that despite the severity of the abuse Sarah suffered from Harold, the investigation suggested it was consensual. Despite acknowledging the authenticity of Sarah's mental disorder, the judges ultimately found her guilty of murdering Harold. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 50 years, a verdict that shocked both Sarah and her family. The sentencing decision raised concerns that the court had not adequately considered the long-term abuse Sarah endured and her mental state at the time of the crime. As a result, many felt that her punishment was disproportionately harsh. In response, Sarah filed an appeal, arguing that the court should have taken her history of abuse into account during the trial. Fortunately, by that time, more evidence of Harold's horrific behavior had come to light. Upon analyzing his computers, detectives discovered a large collection of illegal pornography. Furthermore, another woman reported that Harold had abused her 2 daughters. Considering this new evidence, Sarah's appeal led to a reduced sentence of 25 years, a 50% decrease from the original sentence. Despite this new information, Sarah remains incarcerated. The judge acknowledged that Harold had indeed abused and manipulated Sarah, but emphasized that this did not justify her premeditated murder. Initially, Sarah was a victim of Harold's exploitation. He was a master manipulator, deceiving many in with his charm. Some individuals still recall his generosity, as he had helped employees in financial. Harold's family acknowledges his wrongdoing but also remembers his positive qualities. They believe he needed help, not death. Similarly, Sarah's family agrees that she should face consequences for her actions but thinks the sentence was too severe, given the circumstances of her trying to escape her abuser. Harold was a complex individual, well-liked by many, yet with a darker side. His story shows how life's difficulties, traumatic incidents, and not having enough support can result in very unfortunate consequences. Sarah was abused by someone she trusted, suffered lasting damage to her mental health. However, this trauma does not excuse her intentional killing of another person. Ultimately, Harold's story teaches us to look beyond a person's appearance, as their true nature may be hidden. Harold, perceived as kind and generous, was actually manipulative and predatory. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lucy Davis. Lucy Davis was born in 1971 in the picturesque town of Penimprid, Wales. Her childhood was filled with love and warmth, thanks to her parents, Roger and Andre, who created a happy and comfortable home. Lucy grew up in the beautiful village of Glenk with her younger sister, Anna. Lucy took her first steps surrounded by majestic mountains and enchanting forests. Her kind nature and charming smile make her stand out, becoming a dynamic and special individual among those around her. Lucy easily gained the sympathy of her teachers and classmates. She developed a passion for horseback riding at a young age and had an endless love for horses. Seeing how eager Lucy was, her father arranged for her and her younger sister to take horse riding lessons with experienced instructors. They mastered the basics of this noble art, conquering challenges and overcoming obstacles. Lucy and Anna became skilled horse riders. Lucy Davis had a wonderful childhood in Wales, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the love of family and community, which helped her grow and develop. Lucy and Anna developed a passion for horse riding, which not only brought them companions but also taught them valuable life skills such as discipline, self-control, and responsibility. Their talent and perseverance earned them recognition at prestigious competitions, where they won multiple awards. However, Lucy's interests extended beyond horse riding. With a curious mind and a desire for knowledge, Lucy explored other passions, including music. She took flute and piano lessons, diligently honing her skills, and within a year, she had mastered both instruments, captivating audiences with her performances. This led to her joining the Glamorgan Youth Orchestra, where she continued to refine her musical talents. Lucy also participates in the school choir, which allows her to express her creativity and love of music. Lucy Davis's childhood was a balance of fun and dedication, marked by hard work and eager to learn. These qualities formed a strong base that would support her future successes and help her become an extraordinary person. In high school, Lucy became close friends with Garrick Jenkinson, a quiet and enigmatic young man from Wales. Despite not knowing much about his background, but they developed a strong and lasting connection. Garrett and Lucy became closer friends as time passed. However, Garrett secretly harbored romantic feelings for Lucy. After graduating from high school in 1998, Lucy pursued her passion for music and enrolled at the University of Yorkshire in Northern England. She initially aspired to become a music teacher but later realized her true desire was to create art in a major city. This realization led Lucy to meet Grimmy McAllister, whose perspective and humor aligned with hers. As their connection grew, Lucy introduced Grimmy to her parents, Roger and Andre. The introduction was a success, and Lucy's parents saw Grimmy as an ideal partner for their daughter. After careful consideration, Lucy and Grimmy chose to live together and start a family. In 1995, while in college, the couple had a son named James and Anne. To care for their child, Lucy took a break from her studies, while Grimmy continued his education and worked night shifts at the postal sorting department to support their family. Despite the challenges she faced, Lucy was hopeful about their future, driven by her love for her family and her aspirations for a better life. However, spending months at home with the baby took a toll on her, and she began to feel lonely. The fact that she and Grimmy rarely spent time together, due to his night shifts, made the problem even worse. Seeking companionship and someone to talk to, Lucy created a social media account under the nickname Miseria. This virtual outlet allowed her to share her experiences and connect with others. One user in particular caught her attention, Harold Landry, a 53 years old, he from Louisiana who had grown up in poverty and was fixated on achieving independence and success. Harold put in a lot of work and eventually came to an important insight. He understood that real wealth came not from owning oil wells, but from providing the essential tools and machinery needed to keep them running. With this insight, he founded a company that specializes in manufacturing hydraulic equipment for major oil companies in the southern United States. As his business thrived, Harold's fortunes grew, earning him not only financial security but also prestige and, eventually, the status of a billionaire. For Lucy, conversing with Harold was invigorating. She was captivated by his life experiences, dedication, and generosity. However, their relationship was not without its challenges. The significant gaps in their age, social standing, and lifestyle often caused friction between them. When Harold and Lucy first met, Harold's life seemed to be a confusing combination of luxury in many different experiences. He indulged in unusual hobbies, acquired luxury items, and owned real estate on KML Island in Mexico. There is no information about his previous marriages. He was married and divorced twice, but it is not known whether he had children from these marriages. Harold's life underwent a major transformation in 1992. Following his second divorce, he met Geraldine, a woman 20 years his junior, born in 1966 and originally from Mexico. At the time, Geraldine was married to Chris Price and had 2 children. Despite Geraldine being married, but Harold successfully captured her heart. On February 6, 1994, Harold planned a romantic dinner for Geraldine in New Orleans. They employed Christian Hurton as a babysitter for their children, giving them the opportunity to enjoy a romantic evening by themselves, free from childcare responsibilities. After dinner, Harold walked Geraldine home and then offered to drive Christian home as a thank you. Unbeknownst to Harold, Chris Price, Geraldine's husband, had been monitoring the couple's secret affair. Chris, who was watching from his car, decided to confront Harold. He chased after him, finally catching up at a red light. Chris rushed towards Harold, shouting accusations. Harold remained calm, pulled out a gun, and warned Chris to back off. Enraged, Chris dared Harold to shoot. Without hesitation, Harold fired, hitting Chris in the neck. Fortunately, Chris received prompt medical treatment from a nearby hospital, and which saved his life. In 1997, Harold was tried in St. Mary Parish Court for the attempted murder of Chris Price. His lawyer, Pete Fannin, argued that Harold was a victim of a setup. The jury found Harold guilty of aggravated assault with a weapon, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, after appealing, Harold was released on parole, required to pay a fine and perform community service. Harold was thankful to Pete for his assistance and they formed a friendship. Harold and Chris reached a settlement, but the details of the compensation were kept private. Harold then lived in Covington as a wealthy man, openly discussing his past with Lucy, including his previous failed marriages and a traumatic incident. Lucy became more attracted to Harold after he shared his secrets. She was captivated by his persuasive nature. After Lucy ended her relationship with Grimmy, she and Harold chose to start dating. To shield them from unwanted issues, Harold aimed to steer clear of trouble. In early 2000, Harold visited England to meet Lucy's parents, Roger and Andre. Although they were initially surprised by the age gap, they supported their daughter's decision and didn't meddle in the relationship. Harold gave Lucy many costly presents because he wanted to fulfill all her wishes. His love was intense, and he contemplated marriage, but wanted everything to be flawless. Harold plans a trip to Mexico to strengthen his relationship, inviting Lucy, her son James, and her ex-husband Grimmy to join them on this special journey. Mexico was a paradise for Harold, and having his friend and lawyer Pete's apartment nearby added to the trip's comfort. Harold had recently bought a diamond engagement ring and shared the news with Pete. However, Pete suspected Lucy was cheating on Harold due to her frequent meetings with Grimmy. Despite Pete's warnings, Harold proposed to Lucy, blinded by his love for her. She accepted his proposal. In mid-2003, Harold and Lucy got married. Harold purchased a $1 million home in Warshire County, and they started a new life together. Their neighbors, Rachel Clark and Stephen Kennedy, were friendly and helped them feel welcome in the area. After the wedding, Lucy gave birth to a daughter named Haight. Harold also welcomed James, Lucy's son from her previous marriage, into their family and treated him as his own. Over time, Lucy and Harold's relationship began to deteriorate. Harold became increasingly controlling, expecting Lucy to obey him completely. However, Lucy was an independent person and refused to comply with Harold's demands. As a result, arguments and disagreements became more frequent, creating a tense atmosphere at home. Their son, James, had a difficult and unhappy childhood due to his family's stressful environment. Lucy and Harold's relationship was deteriorating, and their neighbors took notice. The situation was made worse by their growing reliance on alcohol, which added to their existing problems. However, when the arguing and shouting stopped, neighbors thought the couple was trying to resolve their issues. In 2009, Lucy reconnected with her old school friend Garrett on social media. Their online conversations became a source of comfort for Lucy during a difficult time in her life. As Harold sensed Lucy's growing distance, he realized she was seeking solace in another man. Not wanting to confront the situation, Harold left for Mexico, leaving Lucy alone. During his absence, Lucy invited Garrett to visit. Harold was surprised when he got home. Shortly after, Lucy filed for divorce. And Harold began an affair with their neighbor, Rachel. Harold and Lucy's divorce proceedings were complicated by disagreements over dividing their assets. Lucy wanted to keep the family home for the sake of their children, while Harold was adamant that they sell it and offered her a financial settlement instead. The situation between Lucy and Harold became increasingly heated, and Lucy revealed some of Harold's past secrets. When Lucy returns home, the arguments continue, and the tension between her and Harold causes Jameson and Haight much suffering. On the evening of Monday, February 1, 2010, Harold was drinking wine when a package intended for his neighbor, Stephen Kennedy, was mistakenly delivered to his address. Later that evening, around 9 p.m., Stephen stopped by Harold's house to collect his package after noticing the delivery notification. Upon arriving, Stephen was greeted by Harold, then Harold offered him a glass of wine. Although Harold had already been drinking and was visibly intoxicated, Stephen accepted the offer. After a brief visit, during which he collected his package and exchanged greetings with Lucy, and Stephen left. Harold and Lucy's argument soon resumed, this time centering on Lucy's plans to buy furniture for her new home. James rushed into the kitchen after hearing a commotion and witnessed Harold physically abusing his mother with a kitchen utensil. James immediately called the police and comforted his younger sister. Meanwhile, Lucy grabbed the children and attempted to escape the house, heading to Stephen's residence in search of help. However, Harold caught up with her during the escape and violently attacked her with a knife, stabbing her in the chest. He then dragged her body under a nearby bush, attempting to conceal the crime. Upon hearing the screams, Stephen rushed outside and discovered Lucy's lifeless body. Initially, he thought she had fainted, but soon realized the gravity of the situation. Police officer Steve C. Fox arrived at the crime scene and immediately called for an ambulance. He then began searching the neighborhood for Harold, but unfortunately, he was unable to find Harold. The children, traumatized and frightened, hid in the house until the police arrived. A tragic incident drastically altered the family's life, leading to a prolonged and challenging struggle for justice. An ambulance quickly arrived and transported Lucy to Yorkshire Hospital, but unfortunately, she succumbed after to the hospital. At the same time, a fearful Harold knocked on his friend Rachel's door, his voice shaking. He confessed to doing something terrible, but didn't reveal what it was. Harold then gave Rachel a large sum of money, $40,000, along with all his cash, car keys, and paychecks. After that, he headed home. Meanwhile, the police were searching for Harold. They scoured the streets, interviewed witnesses, but he seemed to have vanished. However, luck eventually turned in the detectives' favor, and Harold was arrested on his way back from Rachel's house. His face, filled with fear and remorse, was telling. Lucy's family, including her parents Roger and Andre, were overcome with grief. In a statement to the press, they expressed their profound sorrow at the loss of their daughter and chose not to make any additional comments. The forensic examination confirmed that Lucy died from multiple stab wounds to the chest. The investigation relied heavily on evidence discovered at the crime scene and a key eyewitness account from James, Lucy's son, who saw the tragic event unfold. February 24, 2011, was a day of tension in the courtroom, as everyone waited anxiously for the verdict in the trial of 64-year-old Harold Landry, who was accused of murdering his 38-year-old wife, Lucy. The jury had just delivered their guilty verdict, and the air was thick with bitterness and loss. Harold should have been Lucy's rock and protector, stood accused of her murder. His lawyer and friend, Pete, had passed the case to experienced attorney Andy Child, who faced an uphill battle in defending Harold. The defense's task was to convince the court that Harold never intended to take Lucy's life. The defense claimed that Harold acted in response to Lucy's aggressive behavior. Overcome with emotion, Harold swore he loved his wife and was consumed by remorse, insisting he never meant to hurt her. As part of his defense strategy, he pleaded guilty to manslaughter in connection with Lucy's death. However, the prosecution presented damning evidence, including disturbing photographs of multiple wounds on Lucy's body. The brutality of Harold's attack left no doubt about his guilt. After a thorough review of the evidence, the court delivered its verdict. Harold Landry was found guilty of Lucy's death and sentenced to life in prison. He must serve 16 years before being eligible for parole, at which point he will be 82 years old. The story of Harold and Lucy is a tragic love story. Although the trial is over, the consequences of this tragedy still linger. Lucy's parents, Roger and Andre, felt that the verdict was fair, but it did not alleviate their grief. Meanwhile, Harold Landry maintained his innocence and vowed to appeal the decision. He claimed that he would not change anything, even with the benefit of hindsight. Harold has been held accountable for his actions. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Natalie Connolly. Natalie Connolly is a beautiful and charming woman who has a stunning appearance identical to her twin sister. Her sister is equally beautiful, and they share a close bond not only because of their similar appearance but also because of their deep connection. Natalie has a special ability to bring joy to those around her. She can easily make people laugh and chat with anyone she meets. Despite facing the challenges of being a single mother, Natalie always strives to ensure that her daughter, Madison, does not lack anything. Her care and love for Madison are evident in her constant presence and attention. In a crowded bar, Natalie meets John, a charming and elegant man. They are attracted to each other from the beginning, and their relationship gradually blossoms. John's charm and wit quickly capture Natalie's heart, They exchange contact information and begin to delve deeper into their relationship. As Natalie spends more time with John, she feels an irresistible attraction to him. This was evident from the moment they first met, even though she had no idea of his profession or wealth at the time. As they grow closer, John reveals that he is a millionaire. His wealth is displayed through lavish gifts and fancy dinners at top restaurants. Natalie is fascinated by John's gentlemanly and elegant style, as well as his lavish mansion. However, behind John's charming exterior, there is much more mystery. His life is far more complicated than he lets on. While engaged to a pregnant partner and expecting a second child, John hides the existence of 3 other children. His relationship with Natalie is actually an affair, which continues even as John deals with the breakup of his previous relationship. Eventually, John chooses to turn his attention to Natalie. Their romance seems like a fairy tale from the start. John and Madison become close quickly, and Natalie soon wins the hearts of John's children. John treats Natalie to lavish and romantic experiences, from spa trips to hiring a chauffeur. It seems like he is making all her dreams come true. However, when Natalie moves in with John in Kinver, Stafford, England, the truth slowly emerges. Their relationship, initially fueled by passion, reveals its true nature once they live under the same roof. As they spend every waking moment together, they begin to understand each other better. However, John's interests start to annoy her. He enjoys intimate interactions and often leaves bruises and scratches. Romantic gestures and lavish dinners lose their appeal as Natalie realizes that she has to pay a high price for all of them. Natalie once thought her relationship with John was a fairy tale, but now she realizes the harsh truth behind it. Fearing abandonment, she still accepts John's demands during their intense sexual encounters. She recalls how John abandoned his pregnant ex-fiancée and fears the same thing will happen to her. Despite this, Natalie still feels fulfilled in the relationship and does not want to leave because she fears returning to her old monotonous life. She seeks comfort and guidance from her sister and mother, sharing the bruises and scratches John leaves during their intense sexual encounters. She admits that John enjoys causing her pain. Natalie faces a difficult situation as her relationship with John brings her happiness but also has negative aspects. She is caught in a dilemma of wanting to maintain her luxurious lifestyle with John while being dissatisfied with the intimate aspect of the relationship. The tension between them increases as they both seek out other relationships. As John continues to chat with other women, Natalie also begins texting other men without John's knowledge. When John discovers these exchanges, he becomes very angry. Although John makes no secret of his interactions with other women, he strongly objects to Natalie interacting with other men, highlighting the unfairness of their relationship. Despite John's attempts to hide his insecurities, he invites Natalie out for a casual evening on December 18, 2016, which includes drinks, football, and dinner. John forces Natalie to drink heavily and even offers her cocaine, albeit in smaller amounts than he consumes. This was not the first time he had created such a situation, suggesting a pattern of behavior intended to make Natalie more comfortable before committing bad acts on her when they were home alone. This raises the question of whether Natalie's heavy drinking on these occasions was an attempt to dull the pain she knew she would endure behind closed doors with him. John wanted to be in complete control of the situation, ensuring he could carry out his intentions towards Natalie without being hindered. Therefore, he carefully controlled his alcohol intake, aiming to achieve a mild state of intoxication that did not affect his performance during their sexual encounters. After what seemed like a pleasant day out, ending with a satisfying meal at one of their favorite places, John arranged for a driver to take them home. However, beneath the normal appearance, John's evil intentions were hidden. That day, Natalie was in a drunken state, which only worsened as dinner failed to sober her up or absorb the alcohol. She was disoriented, stumbling out of the car as they arrived home, accidentally leaving her phone behind. Instead of letting Natalie recover from her drunkenness, John had other intentions. He returned to retrieve Natalie's phone, but it is unclear whether he had seen her messages. Natalie became the victim of John's cruel actions as he attempted to inflict maximum harm on her. He attacked her in various ways, including punching, kicking, stomping, and the disgusting act of throwing bleach at her face and genitals. To add to her pain, John used a bottle of carpet cleaner, using its nozzle as a weapon. After the attack, he left Natalie naked and bloody at the bottom of the stairs, her dress pulled up around her waist, leaving her to suffer from her injuries. Natalie lay motionless in a pool of blood when John left the bed. A few hours later, when he awoke, he discovered that Natalie had died from the severe injuries she had sustained, totaling 40. John's subsequent actions, including his nonchalant call to emergency services, revealed his twisted mentality. He showed no emotion or remorse when he informed the paramedics of his futile attempts at CPR and referred to Natalie's unresponsive state with indifference. As the paramedics loaded Natalie's body into the ambulance, John remained silent and emotionless, observing the tragic consequences of his actions. After Natalie was pronounced dead, John was arrested. To justify his cruel actions, John made the excuse that the rough sex had gone too far and claimed his innocence. He alleged that Natalie had consented to the rough actions, claiming that she had initiated them and that she had been the one who desired all these brutal actions. According to John, Natalie allegedly requested rough sex, including being injured, beaten, and even having a bottle of carpet cleaner inserted into her. John claimed that, despite bleeding and in pain, Natalie allegedly reassured him that she was safe and wanted to continue. However, John's account is not credible. He attempted to deflect blame by saying that Natalie had agreed to engage in rough sex and that they had engaged in similar acts many times without issue. When asked about leaving Natalie partially clothed at the bottom of the stairs, John offered a weak excuse, claiming it was a regular occurrence and that he had never provided a blanket because the house was always warm. Throughout the proceedings, John showed no remorse or regret for his actions. Instead, he placed the blame squarely on Natalie. His attempts to shift the blame left onlookers frustrated. Despite being convicted of manslaughter, John received a lenient sentence of 3 years and 8 months, but only served 22 months before being released. Natalie Connolly's case sparked widespread criticism and controversy, leading Fiona McKenzie to launch the "We Can't Agree with This" movement in December 2018. The movement aims to promote discussion about sexual assault and calls for the removal of the rough sex defense. In Fiona's view, the defense minimizes and legitimizes violence in intimate relationships, perpetuates harmful stereotypes, and devalues the experiences of survivors. However, in interviews, Fiona has been surprised that some people, despite disagreeing with the court's decision, have accepted it. The reason for this acceptance is that they believe the incident was isolated, not a systemic problem. However, this way of thinking often leads to victim blaming, with survivors being held responsible for the risks that may have resulted from their behavior. Such attitudes highlight the need for continued advocacy and education to challenge harmful beliefs and support survivors of sexual violence. The Domestic Violence Bill was passed by Parliament on July 6, 2020, and following royal assent on April 29, 2021, it became law and is known as the Domestic Violence Act 2021. This marks a significant step forward in combating domestic violence and preventing perpetrators from using harmful excuses to justify their actions. Natalie's loss has left a deep void in the lives of her family and friends. They are still grappling with the pain of her loss. However, their unwavering love and support for Natalie is a testament to her strong and resilient spirit. The community has come together to raise awareness of domestic violence and support survivors on their journeys to healing and recovery. Their solidarity and compassion are an inspiration and hope to those struggling. Although Natalie Connolly's life was tragically cut short, her memory will live on in the hearts of those who knew and loved her. Her story will hopefully inspire us to come together to fight domestic violence and support those in need. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shannon Christian. Hugh Christopher Newsom Jr., commonly known as Christopher, was born on September 21, 1983 in Knoxville, Tennessee, to Mary and Hugh Newsom in a large, loving family. As the youngest child, he was doted on by his family. Christopher was an athlete as a youngster, particularly excelling at baseball during his school years. His coach believed he had a bright future in the sport, but a serious injury and lengthy recovery ended his promising athletic career. Christopher was a man of many talents. In addition to being an excellent artist and guitar player, he was skilled in carpentry and had knowledge of cars and motorcycles. As a young man, Christopher dreamed of becoming a mechanic, but he ended up spending much of his time on his passion for carpentry. After graduating from high school, Christopher attended the University of Tennessee, where he studied hard and became one of the top students. Shannon Gail Christian was born on April 29, 1985, in Nagdoy, Texas, the youngest of two children born to Dina and Gary Christian. She grew up with her older brother, Chase, and the two had a close relationship. In 1997, the family moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, where the children attended local schools and their parents started a small business. At home, Dina conducted individual therapy sessions. Shannon was an outgoing and kind girl who shared her mother's interest in psychology. After graduating from high school, she studied sociology at the University of Tennessee and worked part-time to save money for a car. On her 21st birthday, her family helped her buy the silver Toyota 4Runner of her dreams. In 2006, when Shannon was 21 and Christopher was 23, they met through mutual friends at college. It was love at first sight and they quickly became attached. After only a month, Christopher introduced Shannon to his parents and expressed his future intentions to her. Shannon reciprocated by introducing Christopher to her family, and he was warmly welcomed. In October 2006, an important family dinner was held, attended by both parents and siblings. Discussions revolved around Shannon and Christopher's deep feelings for each other, their plans to get married after graduating from college. Everyone was happy and full of hope for the future, unaware of the tragedy that was about to happen to their family. On January 6, 2007, Shannon and Christopher were invited to a mutual friend's birthday party. That Saturday, Shannon went to a beauty salon to prepare for the celebration, parking her car in a nearby underground garage where they planned to meet. However, Christopher arrived late, leading to a small argument between them because they were late for the event. Shannon and Christopher's friends were worried when the couple missed the party. Normally, they were very responsible people and would not miss an event without notice. People tried to contact them by phone but were unsuccessful. In this situation, Shannon's best friend called her mother several times late at night to check on her, but also received no response. The next morning, Shannon's mother, Dina, noticed that her daughter had not returned home. She was not too worried at first, thinking that Shannon might have stayed at Christopher's house after the party or gone straight to work because she had a shift on Sunday. However, Dina's worries increased when she saw several missed calls from unknown numbers in the middle of the night. When she called back, she was informed that Shannon and Christopher had not attended the birthday party and could not be reached. This caused Dina to panic, thinking that something bad had happened to her daughter. Neither Shannon nor Christopher answered their phone calls. Christopher's parents were also surprised, thinking that he was at Shannon's house. The situation became even more worrying when they discovered that Shannon had not gone to work. Both sets of parents immediately called the police, but the response was lukewarm. The police thought that Shannon and Christopher might have wanted some time alone and could not be tracked down. They also followed protocol to only consider an adult missing after 24 hours of no contact. For Shannon and Christopher, however, those 24 hours were crucial. Their parents and friends searched frantically for them. They contacted everyone they knew, checked hospitals, distributed flyers, and used social media to find information. However, no leads emerged. Shannon was last seen at the hair salon on Saturday, when she only talked about an upcoming party. On Monday, January 8th, the police began searching for Shannon and Christopher. By this time, thanks to the efforts of family and friends, the whole city knew about their disappearance. A railway worker discovered badly damaged human remains on an embankment along the tracks. The bodies were in a terrible state, with multiple injuries and burned with a flammable liquid. The police cordoned off the area and investigated, but found no significant clues. After being photographed, the remains were taken to the morgue for an autopsy and an attempt at identification. Although this would be difficult due to the extensive damage to the body. The autopsy revealed that the victim was a young man who had been brutally murdered. He had suffered multiple serious injuries before his death, including losing most of his teeth due to beatings. He had been shot 3 times, twice in the back and once fatally in the head. Evidence also suggested that he had been raped multiple times by at least 3 different attackers. Police identified the victim as Christopher, a young man who had recently gone missing, based on his physical appearance. They contacted the Newsom family to obtain a DNA sample for confirmation. The DNA results eventually confirmed that it was Christopher. Meanwhile, the search for Shannon continued. Although devastated by the news of Christopher, the Shannon family remained hopeful that she was alive. Shannon's last cell phone signal was detected in a dangerous area of Knoxville where neither of them frequented, suggesting they may have been coerced into going there and that Shannon may still be held in the area. Shannon's Toyota 4Runner was found abandoned in a deserted alley. The car was in such bad condition that her parents barely recognized it. It was dirty, scratched, had a broken light, and flat tires. Shannon's personal belongings were gone, replaced by cigarette butts and a damaged car seat. The driver's seat was pushed back, suggesting the last driver was a large man. An envelope with the address 2316 Chipman Street was found between the seats. A witness reported seeing 4 black men driving the SUV on Saturday night. Fingerprints on the envelope led police to Lamarcus Davidson, a man with a criminal record. His home was in a remote industrial area. When no one answered, police forced their way in, hoping to find Shannon alive. Inside the house, police found Shannon's personal items, including a wallet and stuffed toys, along with headphones and Christopher's baseball cap. They also found a bloody knife and torn, bloody women's clothing. Shannon's body was found in the house's trash bin, wrapped in dirty bed sheets and 5 trash bags, in a fetal position. Experts estimate she died in the early morning hours of January 8th. This suggests that if police had started searching immediately after receiving the missing person report instead of waiting 24 hours, Shannon could have been saved. The condition of Shannon's body shocked even experienced forensic experts. Her entire body was covered in bruises, scratches, cuts, and cigarette burns. Injuries to her genitals, mouth, and throat suggested she had been sexually assaulted by multiple men. Shannon also had severe head injuries and internal bleeding in her abdomen, possibly from being kicked. The attackers brutally tortured her by stabbing her multiple times. They tried to erase her DNA by pouring bleach on her, especially her wounds and private parts, and even forced her to drink bleach. They then wrapped her in a garbage bag, stuffed her in a trash can, and covered her up. She slowly died of suffocation and blood loss, unable to escape or call for help. 5 suspects have been identified in the murders of Shannon Christian and Christopher Newsom. Lamarcus Davidson, the main suspect, was immediately sought. Police are also looking for Eric Boyd, another suspect in connection with the crime scene. Eric was arrested on January 11 and cooperated with the investigation, claiming his innocence. He revealed where Lamarcus was hiding and led police there. He was arrested without resistance. When he was arrested, he was wearing the shoes of the deceased victim. During questioning, Lamarcus tried to minimize his role by claiming to be the victim. He said Shannon and Christopher had come to his house to buy drugs but had gotten into an argument with an acquaintance of his. He claimed he had left to avoid involvement and the violence that had occurred in his absence. Subsequent interviews revealed 3 more people involved: Davidson's friend George Thomas, LaTalvis Cobbins, and Vanessa Coleman, 18. The 5 suspects were arrested and held separately for questioning. They blamed each other, inadvertently revealing details of the crime. From their fragmentary statements, police were able to reconstruct the sequence of events and the roles each person played in the crime. Lamarcus, a newly paroled man, was having financial difficulties. He had started dealing drugs and needed a car to make deliveries. He decided to steal a car from an underground parking lot without security cameras and went there with his accomplices. Unfortunately, Shannon and Christopher were in the parking lot at the time and were arguing. The gang decided to kidnap them so as not to leave any witnesses. They held them at gunpoint and put them in the trunk of the car. The couple were taken to Lamarcus's house, where they were brutally beaten and raped. After midnight, Christopher was forced into the trunk of the car, naked and barefoot. He was taken to the train tracks, forced to walk on gravel, and shot twice in the back and once in the head. His body was then doused with flammable liquid and set on fire to destroy the evidence. After attacking Christopher, the gang returned to the house, where Shannon was still tied up. The next day, she was subjected to brutal torture, causing severe injuries to her entire body. They eventually doused her with bleach and stuffed her into a plastic garbage bag while she was still alive, causing her to slowly suffocate. It is unclear when Vanessa Coleman joined the group. She claimed that she was forced to participate in the crimes. However, Eric pointed out that Vanessa was Lamarcus' girlfriend and participated willingly, even taking Shannon's jewelry and phone. The investigation determined that Lamarcus Davidson, born in 1981, was the leader of the group and the main instigator of the brutal acts. Lamarcus attempted to deflect blame and minimize his role, while placing the blame on the dead victims. Lamarcus was convicted of 40 counts, including assault, kidnapping, robbery, and premeditated murder. The jury unanimously decided to sentence Lamarcus to death for his brutal acts. LaTalvis Cobbins, born in 1982, initially faced the death penalty for torture, assault, and participation in the murder. He was eventually sentenced to life in prison without parole. George Thomas, born in 1983, was also sentenced to the same sentence for similar crimes, with no chance of parole. Eric Boyd cooperated with the investigation and helped capture Lamarcus, and was sentenced to 18 years in prison. The victim's family said the sentence was too lenient. Vanessa Coleman, the only woman involved in the atrocities, was sentenced to 53 years in prison. In 2011, the case took a surprising turn when the presiding judge resigned due to drug addiction, calling his ability to judge into question. The verdicts from the previous 2 years were overturned, leading to a retrial, including the case of Christian and Christopher. A new judge was appointed to retry all 5 defendants. As a result, Lamarcus was still sentenced to death. LaTalvis continues to serve life without parole. George was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 51 years. Vanessa had her sentence reduced from 53 years to 35 years. Her appeal in 2014 was rejected, and her request for parole in 2017 was also denied. In 2020, the parole board decided that she must continue serving her sentence until at least April 2032. Eric Boyd's case took a significant turn. Initially, he received a shorter sentence for cooperating with investigators. However, new evidence later proved his involvement in the assaults and deaths of both victims. At his retrial, his accomplice George testified against him, revealing previously unknown details about Eric's role. As a result, Eric was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. George, who originally faced the possibility of parole after 51 years, had his sentence reduced by 15% for his testimony, provided he maintains good behavior. Eric's attempts to appeal his new sentence were unsuccessful, and he is currently incarcerated at the Bledsoe County Correctional Complex. Lamaricus continues to be held at the maximum security Riverbend institution as he awaits execution. The case had a profound impact on the public and legal system. It received extensive media coverage and resulted in the passage of 2 new laws. The first law was designed to protect victims from attempts to defame them or shift blame onto them during trials. This legislation was a direct response to the defense team's strategy, which falsely portrayed the murdered students as drug users and thrill seekers in a dangerous area. These baseless accusations caused significant distress to the victims' families. The second law removed the requirement for a judge's signature on a unanimous jury verdict. If this law had been in effect during this case, it could have avoided the need for retrials and sentence reviews. The house at 2316 Chipman Street, where the young couple was tortured, was demolished in the fall of 2008. A memorial was built there to honor Shannon Christian and Christopher Newsom. In Christian's memory, a golf tournament and a charitable foundation were established to support violence victims. Similarly, a foundation in Newsom's name was created, hosting annual memorial baseball tournaments at Halls Park and offering a scholarship named after him, as he was a student and former baseball player. Initially, the media misrepresented details of the case, whether accidentally or intentionally, despite the public outcry and widespread attention. Many people believe that differences in reporting and delays in coverage were racially motivated because the victims were white and the perpetrators were African American. However, the head of the Association of Criminal Writers and Editors remarked, "I can't confidently say that this case would have gotten more attention if 5 white criminals had been accused of similar crimes against 2 black individuals." Moreover, the Knoxville police chief confirmed that there was no evidence suggesting that these crimes were racially motivated. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Anupama Gulati. Anupama, who lives with her husband and 2 children, was born and raised in Dehradun, but her parents and brother were often worried because they could not reach her on the phone. Since her family used to call her frequently, this loss of contact worried her family. Anupama's brother, Sujan Pradhan, decided to call Anupama's husband, Rajesh Gulati, whom she had been married to since 1999, to ask about his sister. However, every time Sujan Pradhan called, Rajesh would say that Anupama was either busy or had gone on a business trip. This went on for about 2 weeks. During this time, Anupama contacted her brother via email, informing him that she was completely fine and very happy with her husband and 2 children. This reassured her family. However, when they continued to be unable to reach Anupama on the phone, her parents asked Sujan Pradhan to go to Dehradun and meet Anupama. On December 12, 2010, when Sujan Pradhan went to Rajesh's house, Rajesh greeted him unfriendly and said that Anupama was elsewhere and he could not meet her right away. On the other hand, Sujan Pradhan tried to break into Rajesh's house, leading to heated arguments between the two. However, Rajesh did not allow Sujan to enter the house. When Sujan asked Rajesh about Anupama, Rajesh did not provide a satisfactory answer. Sujan decided to go to the nearby police station and filed a missing report for his younger sister, Anupama Gulati. In the report, he also said that he was trying to enter the house but was prevented by Rajesh. The police found the case suspicious and went to Rajesh Gulati's house. When Rajesh saw the police with Sujan, Rajesh tried to remain calm. The police asked Rajesh about Anupama, but Rajesh did not answer directly and tried to distract them. However, the police soon discovered Rajesh's cunning and decided to conduct a full search of the house. During the search, the police noticed a closed room. When the room was opened, there was nothing unusual except a large freezer. The police found the presence of a freezer very strange because such appliances are commonly used in large shops and restaurants. The police wondered why Rajesh would buy such a large freezer for his small family, but he just kept quiet. The police decided to open the freezer to investigate and found many small black bags inside. When they opened one bag, they discovered pieces of meat and then took out some more envelopes. The surprise came when they found a human skull in one of these envelopes. Rajesh Gulati then confessed to the police that the pieces were the body of his wife, Anupama. He broke down in tears and narrated the story. After his confession, the police arrested Rajesh and took him to a local court. There, he was remanded in custody for 5 days. During further investigation, the police discovered a surprising piece of information. Rajesh explained that he had met Anupama at Delhi University, where they both studied and got to know each other. They soon developed feelings for each other and started falling in love. Initially, they kept their relationship a secret from their families, but later decided to go public and asked for permission to get married. Both families agreed and they had a grand wedding in 1999. After marriage, Rajesh's career grew rapidly, and he found a job in a large company in the US. Rajesh and Anupama moved to the US so that he could work as a software engineer. They were living comfortably now, and they had bought a house, which meant that their finances were stable. However, after a few months, Anupama started feeling lonely because Rajesh often went to work every day and she had to stay home alone. During her boredom, Anupama often contacted a close friend of Rajesh's. Later, Rajesh found out that Anupama had become close friends with a close friend of his. Rajesh felt uncomfortable knowing that Anupama and his friend were talking on the phone frequently. This caused many arguments between them. Rajesh asked Anupama many times to stay away from his friend, but she did not listen. This made the situation worse in their home. However, in 2006, Anupama gave birth to twins, and the birth of a daughter and a son brought happiness and harmony to the family. While living in the US, Rajesh and Anupama enjoyed a fairly comfortable life. However, that was completely disrupted in 2007 and 2008 when the US fell into an economic recession, leaving many unemployed. Rajesh, after trying to keep his job for a while, also fell into unemployment. To sustain the family, Rajesh used his savings, but as the situation could not last forever, the savings eventually ran out. At that time, Rajesh had no choice but to sell his house in the US. After selling the house, Rajesh decided to return to India with his family. However, Anupama continued to keep in touch with Rajesh's friends over the phone, and this caused a major argument that led to a conflict between Rajesh and Anupama. The arguments escalated and the couple took the matter to the family court. The court eventually decided that Rajesh would provide Anupama with 20,000 rupees per month to meet their expenses. Thereafter, Rajesh and Anupama lived together in a rented flat for a few months in a place called Governor. After some struggle, Rajesh got a job in a big company in Kolkata, about 990 miles away from his home. For the sake of his job, Rajesh had to leave his wife and 2 children and start a new life in Kolkata. In Kolkata, around 2009, Rajesh met a married woman who was suffering from an unhappy marriage. Her husband was not good and often abused her. When Rajesh heard the story of this woman, he felt sympathy for her and gradually, the two became close friends. Gradually, their friendship developed into love. After some time, they decided to marry each other secretly at a temple in Kolkata, without informing any of their family or friends. Rajesh returned to his normal routine after his second marriage. He maintained regular contact with his first wife, Anupama, went to work daily, and kept his second marriage a secret from everyone. However, Anupama noticed changes in Rajesh's behavior and suspected that he was involved with another woman in Kolkata. But she was unaware that Rajesh had actually remarried. The couple continued to argue over this issue, and their relationship became so strained that Anupama started thinking about divorce. However, Rajesh successfully convinced Anupama and they did not go through with the divorce. But when Rajesh failed to pay Anupama the court-ordered maintenance of 20,000 rupees. These financial disputes finally reached a boiling point on October 17, 2010, when Rajesh and Anupama had a huge argument. Rajesh becomes enraged and violently pushes his wife, Anupama, causing her head to hit the corner of the bed. As a result, she starts bleeding profusely. Initially, Rajesh is shocked, but moments later, he lifts a pillow from the bed and uses it to smother Anupama. However, unbeknownst to Rajesh, Anupama is already deceased. Rajesh then frantically searches for a place to hide his wife's body, aware that his children will soon return home from school. With time of the essence, he moves Anupama's body to the second bathroom in the house and locks the door. As he tries to devise a plan to dispose of the body without arousing suspicion, his children arrive home from school and ask about their mother. Rajesh fabricates a story, telling them that their mother suddenly left for Delhi. Rajesh's children believe their mother, Anupama, had gone to visit their grandparents in Delhi. However, Rajesh had other plans. While the children were in school, he went to the market and purchased several items, including a deep freezer, an electric chainsaw, a stone cutter machine, and small black envelopes. When Rajesh brought these items home, he hid them in a separate room. When the children left for school the next day, Rajesh began the gruesome process of dismembering Anupama's body with an electric saw. He closed all the doors and windows to block out the noise. According to Rajesh's statement, Rajesh cut Anupama's body into 72 pieces. He then placed each piece into black bags and carefully stored the bags in the deep freezer to prevent the smell of the deceased from spreading. This process took Rajesh several days to complete. During this time, Rajesh continued to deceive Anupama's parents and brother by making excuses whenever they called, unaware of the horrific events unfolding at his residence. Rajesh took steps to cover up Anupama's disappearance by making excuses to their neighbors and telling their children that their mother had traveled to Delhi. He also had access to Anupama's email account, which allowed him to maintain communication with Sujan Pradhan, Anupama's brother, making it seem as though Anupama was still alive. Following the murder, Rajesh took the children on a weekend trip to Mussoorie in Uttarakhand. During the trip, he would collect 2 or 3 envelopes from the fridge containing pieces of Anupama's body and dispose of them in the forests or gorge along the way. This revelation shocked everyone, and the police began searching the areas where Rajesh claimed to have disposed of Anupama's remains. After an extensive search, the police found some black bags containing body parts in the surrounding forests and gorge. Based on this evidence, Rajesh Gulati was arrested and sent to jail. Rajesh Gulati's twin children were sent to Delhi to live with Anupama's brother, Sujan Pradhan. A court had granted Sujan official custody of the children on March 7, 2011. Rajesh Gulati's father, Satyapal Gulati, appealed this decision but was unsuccessful. On November 3, 2012, the court dismissed his appeal and confirmed that Chari would retain custody of the children. Evidence provided by the police revealed the horrific nature of the crime. Rajesh Gulati had brutally murdered his wife and then cut her body into 72 pieces. After a 7-year trial, Rajesh Gulati was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment on September 1, 2017. He was also ordered to pay a fine of 1.5 million rupees. The court ordered that 70,000 rupees of the fine would go to the state treasury, while the remaining amount would be deposited in the names of the twin children. The children would have access to this money only after they came of age. Rajesh Gulati was sentenced in a lower court, but he appealed this decision in a higher court in 2018. However, there has been no ruling on his appeal yet, resulting in his prolonged imprisonment. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of the Ortega family. Paula, born in March 1986, is the second child in a large family. She excelled at Dario Figueroa Lara School and then went on to study at the Polytechnic University. During her time at university, Paula discovered her passion for the hospitality industry. After completing her studies, Paula became actively involved in expanding her family's business, focusing on the production of party goods. Her family, the Ortega Alcosers, were wealthy and highly respected in Sangalki and surrounding towns in Ecuador. Paula's father had started his business by supplying party goods across Ecuador, eventually finding great success and enabling him to produce his own balloons, piñatas, and other festive items. This growth led to the establishment of multiple stores. The business success led to the opening of several stores in various locations, including in Sinoli in Ecuador's capital, Quito. Each member of the family played a vital role in the business, contributing to its development and operation. The father oversaw the expansion of the main production line, while opening new workshops for various party items. Paula and her two siblings each managed a store, shaping it according to their own vision. Paula's entrepreneurial skills extended beyond just managing her store. The business became even more successful when she added a party planning service. This venture brought her immense joy as it allowed her to bring happiness to people. Paula Ortega has achieved great success in her business career, but her personal life has not been as fortunate. Despite her youthful appearance, but she faced numerous hardships in her life, with her first marriage to Carlos Pedro serving as an example. After their first daughter was born, Carlos became an alcoholic. This led to him frequently disappearing from home, during which time he also stole money from Paula's shop. Things got worse when Paula discovered Carlos was having an affair, forcing her to end her marriage to him. During this difficult time, raising her daughter alone, Paula found it difficult to be optimistic to find happiness. However, with her family's emotional support and dedication to work, she eventually regained some stability. It wasn't until 10 years later that Paula met Christian Diego, a young man 4 years her junior. She was initially hesitant to trust him due to what had happened before. Christian, however, turned out to be patient, reliable, and especially skilled in forming a connection with Paula's daughter. 2 years into the relationship, Paula's heart softened towards Christian, and they decided to get married. Christian lovingly Paula's daughter as his own, and soon they welcomed their new daughter, Maria. Christian and Paula spent 5 happy years together, during which time Christian became an integral part of Paula's family business, helping to find locations for new stores. This job required him to travel often, resulting in frequent absences from home. Christian comes from a low-income family, but he has big dreams. He wants to one day own a large and successful business. In 2000, when her father passed away after a long illness, her life took a complete turn. The loss devastated the family and disrupted their business. Some people are so skilled at hiding their true nature that they can live with others for years without raising suspicion. A shocking and unexpected incident is often what exposes their true nature. And Christian's change becomes apparent after several incidents, which reveal his true character. Christian and his wife, Paula Ortega, appeared to be a happy and successful couple to those around them. But beneath the surface, their relationship was far from perfect. Christian saw an opportunity to take over Paula's father's role and fulfill his own ambitions of wealth and power. Unfortunately, Due to his lack of experience, he made a series of failed business decisions. Frustrated and desperate, Christian's behavior towards his family changed dramatically. He began to resent them, then abandoned them to live a life of luxury. He immersed himself in a world of pleasure and became involved with many women and alcohol. Without Paula's father to restrain him, Christian's true nature finally began to emerge. Paula refuses to repeat the mistakes of her previous miserable marriage, but her relationship with Christian only gets worse. They had an unhappy home life, filled with frequent, that revealed Christian's true character, an ambitious and power-hungry individual who only cared about himself and demanded unconditional obedience. After a heated argument, Paula secretly filed for divorce. However, when Christian found out, his behavior suddenly changed. To maintain his status in the family and afraid of losing everything, Christian repented and tried to change everything. He sincerely apologized for his previous actions, saying that they were due to confusion and insecurity, and vowed to love and cherish his family. Convinced by Christian's words and afraid of being alone again, Paula decided to give him a second chance, despite her initial reservations. In an attempt to mend their relationship, Christian proposed a romantic dinner at home, which Paula agreed to. To prepare for the evening, Paula asked her parents to babysit her daughter. While getting ready, she still couldn't get rid of her mixed feelings. On the surface, she was very excited, but deep inside, she still longed for a happy, united family and durable family. The evening got off to a great start, with the living room decorated with festive garlands and the dining table lit by the warm glow of candles. Christian opened a bottle of white wine, and Paula served a hot meal. However, Christian's sudden announcement disrupted the peaceful atmosphere. He shared with Paula his plans for the Allure company, revealing that he had made a serious mistake in a recent tender, and it has resulted in significant financial losses. Christian announces that the company needs a new investor to stay afloat. This means that a portion of the company's ownership will change officially. Paula objects to the idea, believing that her father's business should remain family-owned. Christian, who has found an investor, becomes increasingly frustrated with Paula's objections. His eagerness to close the deal clashes with Paula's desire to keep the company in the family, causing tension in their relationship and spoiling the mood at dinner. On January 2, 2023, Paula took her youngest daughter to the playroom. She then went to her shop, where she was preparing a large order for an upcoming themed event, which involved assembling balloon fountains and party decorations. During her lunch break, two men showed up at the shop, despite it being closed. She opened the door, expecting a courier for the balloon bouquets she had prepared. To her surprise, the two men were dressed alike and wore dark hoodies, which made them stand out from the other customer. As they entered the shop, they seemed out of place and they're lingering. Scanning the area caused Paula to feel uneasy. The situation escalated when they moved toward her, cornering her against the wall. Then, a young courier knocked on the glass door, breaking the tense atmosphere. Two suspicious men quickly left the store, and the delivery person accidentally rescued Paula from a dangerous situation. Paula felt a mix of anxiety and apprehension as she handed over the package, then she proceeded to close her shop, wrapping up her day. Her hands trembled as she called her mother, expressing her fear over the phone. Although her mother advised reporting the incident to the police, Paula declined. Maybe she was just scared, and no harm actually happened. The rest of the day, Paula's thoughts were consumed by the strange encounter and her husband Christian's recent behavior. Seeking comfort, she took a walk around the city, stopping at a cafe for coffee and then visiting her sister, where they shared a cup of fragrant tea. As they talked, Paula opened up to her sister about the frightening encounter at her shop and her troubled marriage. She shared how Christian had changed after their father's passing, becoming increasingly consumed by his addiction to alcohol and being unfaithful. For the first time, Paula let go of her pride and shame, confessing to her sister the pain she endured in her marriage. The conversation brought her a sense of relief and comfort. Paula's younger sister Adriana described her as lively, happy, enterprising, and hardworking, with a gentle and kind nature as a mother. One day, Paula discussed her long-term goals with her sister, including her aspirations for her daughter's future careers and her own plans for the business. She was a selfless and dedicated person. After their emotional conversation, Paula headed home. However, her journey was interrupted by a phone call from Christian. He informed her that he was picking up their daughter from her play activities and would also stop by the shop to pick up his other daughter. The background noise of children's voices made his conversation rushed. Paula didn't get an opportunity to tell Christian about a disturbing incident at her shop, largely because she suspected his possible involvement. Paula reluctantly went back to work, putting her family's needs before her own. Christian soon arrived alone, explaining that their daughter had opted to go home early, and he couldn't refuse her request. He told Paula that the girls were waiting for dinner at home and were looking forward to hamburgers. Then, Christian took Paula to the courtyard of a shopping center several blocks away, rather than a nearby fast food joint. After parking the car in a secluded area, he left Paula inside while he went to collect their order. As she relaxed in the passenger seat after a stressful day, Paula closed her eyes, unaware of the danger approaching. Two familiar figures soon appeared near the car, talking loudly and circling the vehicle. Paula recognized them as the unexpected visitors who had been to her shop. She tried to remain calm, trusting that the car was secure and Christian would return soon. However, the car's lights suddenly flashed, and the door locks disengaged. Panicked, Paula scrambled to the back seat, hiding between the seats and covering her head with her arms. Unfortunately, she was trapped with no escape. One of the intruders took the driver's seat, and the other got into the back seat. There, he pinned Paula down, making her situation worse. She then felt a warm liquid flowing down her arm, and shortly after, she lost consciousness. Paula sustained severe injuries, including 11 knife wounds on her neck and 2 on her face. A violent attack left Paula heavily injured and her assailants fled the scene. 7 minutes later, Christian returned to the car and witnessed a horrifying scene. The inside of the car was covered in blood. Panicked, Christian called emergency services and struggled to explain the situation clearly. After notifying Paula's mother about the attack, Christian drove to the hospital, but sadly, Paula died in the emergency room before receiving medical attention. Christian's reaction to his wife's tragic death was one of intense grief. Paula's sudden and violent death left everyone in shock, and many questions remained unanswered about the identity and motives of her attackers. Investigators discovered that $600 and a gold necklace were missing from Paula's purse, so they initially suspected a robbery. Further investigation revealed that 2 unknown men had visited Paula's store earlier that day, captured on city cameras. Although the footage showed the suspects wearing hoodies, making their faces unidentifiable, but images from the security camera footage still provide some clues for investigators to pursue. 2 months after the tragic incident, Paula's family was still seeking justice, but the investigation had made little progress. However, things changed when Paula's younger sister, Adriana, shared important information that she suspected Christian was involved in the case. Adriana told investigators about her conversation with Paula on the day of the incident. Revealing Christian's infidelity and domestic violence towards Paula, which led Paula to consider ending her marriage. Christian had a motive for the crime, because if the divorce happened, his ambitions would be affected and he would lose his wealth and social status. The prosecution learned about this lead further and conducted a search of Christian's home, where they found incriminating messages on his phone. These messages revealed multiple affairs and strained marital relations. Another critical piece of evidence was a document that Paula had refused to sign, which would have transferred the company to other investors. As the prosecution continues to gather evidence against Christian, they uncover new details that shed further light on the complexities of Christian and Paula's relationship. Notably, 2 weeks after the incident, Adriana discovered a transaction that raised further suspicions about Christian's behavior. She discovered that he had made a significant transaction, transferring $2,000 to an unidentified woman's bank account. He made a payment from his wife Paula's account while she was dying from her injuries. It seems Christian has been waiting for the right opportunity to do this. Investigations confirmed that on the day of the incident, Christian made a $2,000 transfer to Laura Castillo's bank account. Laura, a 28-year-old woman, was questioned by police after her identity was discovered as the recipient of the payment. Laura explained that she had noticed her bank card was missing a couple of days before the transfer but hadn't thought much of it, assuming her brother had borrowed it. Although her account received the payment, Laura denied knowing Christian and had a solid alibi for the time of the incident, which cleared her of any involvement. She was released from questioning, but the investigation was left at a dead end once again. Days after the crime, Laura went back to the police station with an update on her brother. As she initially suspected, he had indeed returned her bank card. Laura gave a detailed description of her brother's appearance, which matched one of the criminals caught on surveillance cameras near the car. One crucial piece of evidence was that one attacker had neglected to pull up his hood while fleeing the scene, allowing his face to be seen. The investigation led to the identification of 2 offenders, Byron and Morton Castillo, who had an extensive history of criminal activity. The 2 criminals were arrested, but the question remains, why did these criminals target Paula? A deeper investigation revealed that they had attacked Paula repeatedly. On December 8, 2022, Paula was the victim of a car theft at a gas station. As she was distracted by one man, his accomplice quickly got into her car and drove away. Thankfully, her daughters were not in the vehicle at the time. The gas station's surveillance footage revealed the identities of the perpetrators. Besides, Paula had unknowingly met one of the thieves earlier that day. In a surprising turn of events, Christian then came forward claiming that the thieves had contacted him. He arranged a meeting with them, and during this encounter, he managed to retrieve Paula's stolen belongings, including her wallet. This action of Christian makes people suspicious of his true intentions and wonder if he is collaborating with the thieves. Surveillance cameras became key in identifying the men involved in the carjacking, and Christian realized he was a suspect. To divert the police's suspicion, Christian created a new defense story, claiming that he had been blackmailed by Byron and Morton. They demanded a large sum of money from him. However, before he could make this statement, the police acted quickly by questioning Byron and Morton separately and only telling one of them that the other suspect had confessed. The police obtained a confession from Morton. According to Morton's statement, Christian had paid them $2,000 over 2 months before to kill his wife, Paula, with the promise of an additional $2,000 after the murder. During a reenactment of the crime, Morton showed how he inflicted 11 fatal knife wounds on the Paula. With the crime exposed, Morton callously revealed all the details about his and Christian's arrangement. Morton exposed that the car theft and the attack on Paula's shop were also tactics used by Christian to intimidate her. Fortunately, Paula survived for a few hours longer than planned. On November 29, 2023, the 3 suspects, Christian, Byron, and Morton, appeared in court. The prosecution presented a detailed account of the incidents on the day of the murder, compiled from multiple sources. Surveillance camera footage from the area where Christian parked his car was analyzed using forensic techniques. The footage revealed a disturbing series of incidents. In the video, Christian is seen leaving his car and walking towards an elevator in a nearby shopping center. Soon after, Christian is seen remotely unlocking his car from a distance, allowing 2 accomplices, Byron and Morton, to enter the vehicle and attack Paula. The prosecutor's report highlighted Christian's unusual behavior after the attack. Surveillance videos showed him pacing back and forth, making phone calls, and even approaching and then retreating from the car. When he found his bleeding wife, he displayed no signs of shock or a sense of urgency to get her medical help. According to the videos, during the first 4 minutes after the attack, Christian's actions were calm and deliberate. He callously handled financial transactions, paying Byron and Morton for their role in the assault, while Paula lay bleeding in the car. At the time, she was still alive. Paula's family lawyers used this footage as evidence, urging the court to consider it as an aggravating factor in the crime. Christian dropped off Byron and Morton near Paula's store before the attack. However, these individuals arrived at the store earlier than expected, suggests that the original murder may have been planned for the store's closing time, when Paula was alone and eating lunch. The sequence of incidents presented in court during Christian's trial indicates that the crime was premeditated. Several hours before the 1:30 p.m. attack, prosecutor Marlon Caldern pointed out inconsistencies in the suspects' actions, highlighting the question of how they knew Paula would be at the store at that time, unless they had been following them. Furthermore, Christian's behavior was scrutinized as evidence of his involvement in the crime. Notably, he was observed not fully closing the car window and unlocking the doors near the store. Additionally, he was seen pacing back and forth multiple times before assisting his wife and making phone calls, rather than immediately seeking medical attention at a nearby clinic. These actions are central to the case against him, which accuses him of orchestrating the murder of his wife, Paula. Testimonies from 10 witnesses, including neighbors, friends, and acquaintances, revealed Christian's true motives and objectives. He tried to pressure Paula into transferring her shares in the company because he could not sign a legal contract, but his efforts were unsuccessful. Although Christian did not physically harm Paula, he inflicted severe psychological abuse on her, artfully concealing it under the guise of a perfect family life. The Prosecutor General's report stated that video evidence implicated Christian as the mastermind behind the crimes, leading to his isolation. This measure is not an arrest warrant but a precautionary step to curb his threat to society. After this incident, Christian was accused of orchestrating his wife's death. His defense team tried their best to defend that he was innocent. However, they were unsuccessful in refuting key evidence, including surveillance footage and falsified company transfer documents. The defense team then changed their strategy, attempting to depict Christian as suffering from a mental disorder. Multiple psychiatrists evaluated Christian, but ultimately, he was deemed competent to stand trial. With the gravity of the situation becoming increasingly clear, Christian's defense counsel advised him to flee the country. They asked if his passport was ready and suggested that he purchase a ticket to Panama for the next day. However, this plan to evade justice ultimately failed. Christian's search for Central American flight tickets initially raised suspicion with the authorities. Following this discovery, the prosecutor quickly ordered an 8-hour detention of Christian. This was succeeded by the presentation of charges and the disclosure of case details to a specialized domestic violence judge, preceding the trial. Christian was held in pre-trial detention as the alleged mastermind behind an extreme act of violence that left 2 young children without a mother and their family to grieve. The Paula Ortega family demands justice for this heinous crime, emphasizing the immense pain and suffering inflicted on their children and the devastating loss they endured. After the case was widely publicized, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, finding Christian and his 2 accomplices, Byron and Morton, committed a brutal, intentional and carefully planned crime. As the trio showed no remorse, Christian and Byron and Morton were ultimately sentenced to 26 years in prison. The municipal authorities of Romanawi are deeply saddened by the loss of Paula. They expressed their heartfelt condolences to her family and friends. Paula was a highly respected businesswoman, a loving friend, mother, and wife who played a vital role in the development of the canton and bringing prosperity to those around her. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Jasmine Richardson. The Richardson family was widely admired for their friendly and hospitable personalities, which made everyone feel at home. Deborah, Mark, and their children, Tyler and Jasmine, lived in a cozy home. Their home is frequented by friends, and the family atmosphere is built on the principles of love and respect. However, things took a turn when Jasmine, their 12-year-old daughter, entered puberty. From a calm and obedient girl, she grew into a confident but also impulsive young woman. This new personality led to frequent conflicts with her parents, and her academic performance started to decline. Jasmine's interests changed in a big way. She switched from listening to modern pop music to heavy rock. In addition, her fashion style is no longer the same as before. Gone were the bright colors and cheerful clothing. Instead, she opted for a darker, more somber style that was often provocative. It was clear that Jasmine was trying to attract the attention of boys, and she began to accentuate the curves of her body. Her interaction with friends noticeably decreased as she began spending more time alone in her room, often with the door closed, glued to her computer screen. After the internet became available at home, her interests shifted to exploring Gothic themes, reading dark poetry, learning about criminal psychology, and studying human anatomy. She also became fascinated with criminal psychology and the Wiccan religion, referring to herself as a witch. She connected with like-minded individuals through websites focused on similar interests, forming a community of friends who shared her passions. Her social media page featured the greeting, "Welcome to my tragic world." Jasmine's behavior, initially thought to be a sign of puberty, but late became more concerning as she began to distance herself from her family. She created a fictional online persona, gave herself a different name, age, and began seeking relationships with people much older than her. Her parents tried their best to support her during this difficult period, suggesting that they spend time together by participating in common activities. However, Jasmine found these suggestions uninteresting. Her relationship with her younger brother deteriorated as she started speaking to him less frequently, viewing him as an annoyance. In stark contrast, she spends hours talking to strangers on social media, building other relationships, to make up for her lackluster relationships with family and friends. Deborah and Mark were aware that their daughter's new hobbies were likely a temporary phase of her youth. As a result, they were patient and allowed her to explore her interests. When Jasmine asked to attend a punk rock concert, her parents agreed. If only they had known the consequences that would follow this outing. In early 2006, Jasmine attended a local concert by a youth band that shared her interests. She also knew that Jeremy Steinke, a boy who had caught her attention for months, would be there. They had met online through a website for vampire enthusiasts and occasionally communicated with each other. Jeremy created an online persona as a 30-year-old werewolf who craved blood. To support this claim, he wore a vial of blood around his neck, but the origin of the fluid was unknown. Despite his ambiguity, he seems to believe he is unique, a quality Jasmine finds appealing and interesting. Jeremy and Jasmine connection deepened after meeting at a concert. Jeremy, however, was 23 years old, and the duo knew her parents would not approve of their relationship due to their significant age difference. As a result, they decided to keep their romance a secret. Complications in Jeremy's life were made worse by problems he had experienced earlier. He struggled financially and resided in a trailer with his mother and sister. His relationship with his mother was strained, largely because of her heavy drinking. This often led to violent arguments with some of her hot-tempered partners, who often abused Jeremy in drunken fits. By the age of 13, Jeremy was struggling academically and had mental health issues due to a troubled home life. He became so overwhelmed that he tried to hang himself, but fortunately, someone intervened in time. He was later diagnosed with depression and hyperactivity. Due to the relentless bullying he faced at school, Jeremy decided to stop attending. As Jeremy navigated the dark period of his life, he developed a passion for the concept of live immortally and began exploring online forums, where like-minded people shared thoughts and ideas. His online profile was filled with morbid topics, including self-harm, pain, and violence. Unbeknownst to their families, Jeremy had started a dating relationship with Jasmine. Their friends were aware of the relationship, but they found it strange due to the large age gap. Everything remained a secret until Jasmine's parents, Deborah and Mark, discovered her excessive internet use and decided to monitor her online activity. What they found alarmed them. Jasmine was in contact with strangers, including Jeremy. He is someone with a suspicious online identity. His nickname, Soul Eater, and interests in dark themes raised concerns, leading Jasmine's parents to intervene and restrict her access to the computer. They were shocked to learn that Jasmine was in a dating relationship with Jeremy, making it clear to them that this relationship was not acceptable under any circumstances. Deborah and Mark took their daughter Jasmine to see a psychologist, hoping she would get the help she needed to escape her toxic relationship. The counseling sessions greatly improved their parent-child relationship, and Jasmine appeared to be returning to a normal life, claiming the past was behind her. She regained access to her computer. Unfortunately, this turned out to be a wrong decision and proved fatal for Jasmine's family. On the evening of Saturday, April 22, 2006, as the family prepared for bed, Deborah heard a noise in the basement and went to investigate. She initially thought the noise might be rats but discovered a person wearing a ski mask instead. The masked man stood opposite Deborah, and her first reaction was to scream. The stranger attempted to silence her by covering her mouth but was unsuccessful, prompting Deborah to scream even louder. The assailant then stabbed Deborah in the chest with a knife, twice. Mark, hearing his wife's desperate cries for help, rushed down to the basement. He was met with a horrific scene. His wife lay in a pool of blood, with the attacker standing nearby. Mark quickly responded by attacking the intruder. However, he was stabbed in the stomach and sustained additional stab wounds. As Mark's pain began to subside and he was losing consciousness, he quietly asked the attacker why he did that. The attacker coldly replied that it was because Mark's daughter had wanted it that way. Upstairs, Tyler was left alone and scared as the attacker approached. Tyler was still in his pajamas and was paralyzed with fear. The footsteps grew louder and the bedroom door opened. Just a few days before the murder, Jasmine was happy since her parents had forgiven her, allowing her to reconnect with them. Mobile phones weren't widely used at that time, so Jasmine used the computer to communicate with the outside world. As soon as she regained internet access, she immediately contacted Jeremy. She told Jeremy, "Everyone will think you and I are crazy, but there's one way we can be together, if my parents disappear." However, what Jasmine didn't reveal to her parents was that she was secretly forming a plan to kill them while she was receiving therapy sessions. She shared this plan with Jeremy. He found the idea appealing, but he stressed that everything needed to be carefully, meticulously planned and that attention to detail was required. Jasmine realized that as long as her parents were alive, she would never be able to be with Jeremy. During this time, Jasmine's friends noticed that she often complained about her parents, expressing her annoyance towards them. What they don't realize is that Jasmine's resentment eventually leads her to want to end her parents' lives. Despite her frequent comments about killing her parents, but her friends considered it just a funny joke. Garrett crossed the street to his friend Tyler's house on Saturday, April 22, in 2006. He was excited to play, as the weather was pleasant. When he arrived at the Tyler's house, he noticed that the blinds were still closed, which seemed unusual. Even more unusual was that no one came to the door when he knocked. This surprised Garrett, as the Mark's car was parked in the driveway. Curious and hoping to find someone, Garrett peeked through the living room window but didn't see anyone. He then walked to the back of the house, towards the basement area where he often played with Tyler. As he looked through the window, he saw something strange on the floor, what appeared to be two people lying in a pool of blood. This disturbing discovery prompted Garrett to inform his mother. Garrett's mother seemed suspicious at first but decided to check on Tyler's family. They approached the house together, and Garrett pointed to the window he had looked through earlier. The woman peeked inside and was met with a horrific sight, immediately prompting her to call emergency services. "There's been an incident at the Jasmine's house," she reported. The police swiftly arrived at the scene and forcibly entered the house through the front door. They then proceeded to the basement. Due to the severity of their injuries and the large amount of blood, the police initially struggled to identify the bodies. However, despite the difficulties, they were eventually able to confirm that the victims were Mark and Deborah, and tragically, they had lost their lives. The crime scene was exceptionally horrific, with blood splatters covering the floor, walls, and ceiling. Later, during a thorough search of the house, the police found a young child in the upstairs bedroom. The boy was lying in bed, surrounded by toys also splattered with blood, and had visible knife wounds. A young boy's throat had been severely cut. As police searched the house, they realized that the Mark and Deborah's eldest daughter, Jasmine, was missing. This raised concerns for her safety. Initial investigations suggested that the attack occurred in the basement and the child's room, with the rest of the house appearing untouched. The condition of the boy's body indicated that the crime likely took place the previous night. It seemed that the perpetrator had broken into the house and attacked the boy and his parents. But what had happened to Jasmine, and where was she? The police developed several theories to explain her disappearance. One possibility was that she had managed to escape and was somewhere safe. Another possibility was that the perpetrator had taken her and was harming her. However, as the investigation continued, no clear answers emerged. Detectives turned to the media for assistance in locating the missing girl. Jasmine, hoping she would reach out or someone would come forward with valuable information. The investigation into the crime continued. Investigators interviewed relatives and friends of Mark's family and their colleagues to gather more detailed information about their lives. They sought to determine if the family had any enemies who could be capable of such a heinous act. However, upon further investigation, they learned that Mark's family was well loved and had no enemies. They were a loving family with a strong marriage and positive relationships with their children, except for one exception, their eldest daughter, Jasmine, who had been causing trouble lately. As a result, the media announcements shifted focus. The investigation now sought to locate the eldest daughter, Jasmine, a very suspicious person. The girl may have information about the case or might have been involved in it. Under Canadian law, which prohibits publishing the names of minors, so news outlets started referring to Jasmine Richardson as JR because she was underage at the time. After news of her relationship with Jeremy spread, this couple has become a wanted person by the police. The police initially focused on their friends and acquaintances. However, this line of investigation was ultimately unsuccessful, and the investigation reached a dead end. Police investigation revealed some new information. A few hours after the crime, Jasmine and Jeremy were seen at a restaurant and a party hosted by a friend. A friend noticed that Jasmine was fine, showing no signs of distress or trauma, and she continued to socialize, drink, and have fun. When friends asked how they managed to escape from her parents, Jasmine laughed and replied in a light-hearted manner. Jeremy and she took care of them. However, Jeremy's tone took a darker turn when he nodded in agreement, and then he added that he had cut them up like fish, implying a violent act had occurred. Jasmine's laughter downplayed the severity of the situation, making it seem less significant. The party guests burst out laughing, thinking that the remark was a sick joke. However, they did not realize that it was actually true. The guests' amusement was also verified by a comedian who was present. The police found a detailed plan in Jasmine's school locker, revealing her intentions to harm her family members with the help of her boyfriend. The photos of the suspects were widely circulated, and it is likely that they will be caught soon, as someone is expected to come forward with information about their whereabouts. Eventually, police received a tip and found Jasmine and Jeremy in Cedar, Saskatchewan, about 130 kilometers from Medicine Hat. They were found sleeping in a pickup truck and were taken into custody without a struggle. Jasmine and her boyfriend, Jeremy, were questioned individually, with Jasmine being interviewed first. She told investigators that she and Jeremy were deeply in love and that he reciprocated her feelings. However, their relationship was impacted by two main issues: a large age gap and disparate social status. Jasmine claimed that her parents would never have approved of their relationship. According to Jasmine, Jeremy ended the lives of her parents so that they could be together. When detectives inquired about her involvement in the crime, Jasmine denied being present at the time it occurred and stated she had no prior knowledge of the event. After she found out what had happened, she decided to run away with him because her love for Jeremy was so great. Detectives needed to identify the mastermind behind the plot. To get the suspect to cooperate, investigators came up with a clever tactic. They placed an undercover informant in Jeremy's cell, who successfully extracted information from him that contradicted Jasmine's claims. According to Jeremy, the plan to kill Jasmine's parents was actually she's idea. Jeremy was initially hesitant about going along with the plan. However, after realizing his own feelings for Jasmine, he agreed to it. Additionally, Jasmine's parents confiscating her computer as punishment also influenced his decision. Jeremy confessed to the informant. He took care of she parents, Deborah and Mark, while Jasmine took care of her younger brother, Tyler. Jeremy reveals that she desperately begged him to spare Tyler and come to her, and he was happy to get revenge on them all. Following Jeremy's confession, investigators questioned Jasmine using the recorded conversation between them and he as evidence, which left her no choice but to reveal every detail of the crime. She admitted that she stabbed her younger brother, Tyler, stating she didn't want to leave him behind as an orphan. In the following investigation, Jasmine and Jeremy voluntarily shared their social media profiles and passwords. By doing this, investigators were able to look at their private conversations and found thousands of messages that backed up Jeremy's previous claims. It became clear that Jasmine was indeed the mastermind behind the plan. Further investigation also uncovered a disturbing dynamic between Jasmine and Jeremy. Jeremy wrote that Jasmine was the only person who accepted and supported his unusual tastes, helping to alleviate the feelings of isolation he experienced due to not fitting in with societal norms. Fearing that he would lose her, he agreed to help carry out the horrific plan. One of Jeremy's messages contained a chilling passage, exposing his desire for violence. Jeremy wrote that he wanted revenge on Jasmine's parents and was determined to hold them accountable. His intention was to harm them and eventually make them disappear. Jeremy showed his affection for Jasmine in her time of need. However, his friends revealed a disturbing fact. Hours before the incident, Jeremy and his girlfriend had watched the 1994 film Natural Born Killers. This movie tells the story of a couple who brutally murder 9 people. Jeremy's friends stated that after watching the film, he expressed a desire to reenact a similar scenario with his girlfriend, calling it the best love story of all time. Based on the evidence collected, including witness testimony and the suspect's confessions, Jasmine and Jeremy, detectives were able to reconstruct incidents surrounding the crime. This led to the suspects being charged with 3 homicide counts. Jeremy was intoxicated before the incident. Jasmine allowed him into the house and led him to the basement, where he assaulted Deborah, Jasmine's mother. Deborah received 12 stab wounds, with the most severe wound penetrating 12 centimeters into her chest and damaging her heart, which ultimately caused her death. Jeremy then brutally attacked Mark, Jasmine's father, inflicting 24 wounds, 9 of which were on his back. Mark also bled to death on the basement floor. Meanwhile, upstairs Jasmine stabbed her younger brother Tyler 5 times. Then, Jeremy joined her. He coldly slit the boy's throat. Jeremy returned home to clean the blood off himself, while Jasmine took a taxi to a restaurant where they had agreed to meet. Once reunited, they discussed the incident of the night and then went to a party. Jeremy's friend, Casey Lancaster, helped them dispose of the evidence and evade authorities by fleeing to Saskatchewan. The brutality and gruesomeness of their actions are difficult to put into words. Jeremy and Jasmine committed their heinous crimes with ease and without emotion. What is even more disturbing is that during interrogation and detention, neither of them expressed any regret or remorse for their actions. While they were detained, Jeremy and Jasmine wrote letters to each other, referring to themselves as legendary and immortal. In one of these letters, Jeremy submitted a marriage proposal to Jasmine, on she happily accepted. Jasmine and Jeremy's intense relationship fell apart suddenly. As trial began, they blamed each other for their actions. Jasmine was the first to face trial in June 2007. She entered a not guilty plea, claiming that she was in a trance-like state at the time, which left her unable to intervene or stop Jeremy from killing her family. Jasmine also asserted that she only injured her younger brother, and Jeremy was the one who caused her younger brother's death. She made a statement that her conversations with Jeremy about killing her parents were just hypothetical discussions. But Jeremy took them seriously and pressured her into making them a reality. Jasmine received a 10 years prison sentence for 3 counts of homicide. However, due to Canadian laws regarding juvenile offenders, this was the maximum sentence she could receive as she was under 14 years old at the time of the crime. The primary goal of the sentence was to focus on healing and restoring the girl's mental well-being, rather than punishing her. In a 10-prison sentence, including 4 years in a psychiatric facility. During her stay, doctors diagnosed her with 2 conditions: conduct disorder and oppositional defiant disorder. Jasmine showed genuine remorse for her actions in the years leading up to her release, which was noted by medical professionals during her community supervision. After serving her full sentence, Jasmine was released from prison in 2016 and has since been living in Canada under a new, protected identity. Her return to society has been met with mixed opinions, with some people supporting her right to a second chance, while others believe her punishment should have been more severe. The community in Medicine Hat has made it clear they do not want her to return. It remains to be seen whether Jasmine has truly changed and grown during her time in detention. Jeremy's trial began in 2008. He claimed that he had not initially intended to harm his girlfriend's parents, Deborah and Mark. However, after being discovered in a basement, he felt forced to attack. Jeremy denied harming Tyler and instead suggested that Jasmine was the one responsible. His defense argued that Jasmine had deliberately manipulated him into committing the crime, as she sought to escape her parents' strict control. Friends of Jeremy stated that he came to them before the crime. He confided in them his fear of losing Jasmine, to the point where he was willing to do anything to prevent it. Jeremy's lawyers asked the court to reduce the charges to manslaughter, suggesting that he was under the influence of substances at the time of the crime. When questioned by the prosecution about his motives, Jeremy gave an inconsistent response. He stated that when someone finds their soulmate, they will do whatever it takes to keep them. Throughout the trial, Jeremy remained largely unemotional, but broke down in tears when his mother, Jacqueline May, testified in his defense. Jacqueline felt guilty about the role she played in his upbringing, during which he was frequently physically and emotionally abused by her partners. In the end, Jeremy was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree homicide and received 3 life sentences. He will be eligible for parole in 25 years, starting in 2033. Casey Lancaster's charges related to being an accomplice in a crime have been dismissed in a Medicine Hat court. However, she was found guilty of obstructing justice. As a result, she received a 1-year sentence of house arrest and was prohibited from using drugs and alcohol during her custody.